Mansion on deck. Good evening, everybody. As you can see, Rob's not with us tonight. Rob took the night off, enjoying his little time for himself. So it's just going to be me tonight. And we got a good show ahead of us. We have a great interview with a retired lieutenant that I've worked with personally back in Queens North. He's got a great story to tell about his career. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. First of all, I just want to say that yesterday was Veterans Day. On a previous episode around Memorial Day, we described the differences between Labor Day, Memorial Day, and Veterans Day, and how Memorial Day is when we honor and tribute those who have given the ultimate sacrifice in service of this country. And yesterday, on Veterans Day, it was our time to salute and thank those members that are active and retired from military service. So I want to take this time on behalf of Rob and myself and the executive perspective to honor those who have served in the military and do currently serve. So with that, I would just like to say, we thank you, Lord, for our military veterans. Through those who have kept the watch on our behalf, you have prevented war from advancing to our shores, frustrated the plans of wicked people, and protected us from harm. So I want to say, with respect and honor and gratitude, we thank you to all of our veterans from us here at the Executive Perspective. With special thanks and gratitude to our very own finest unfiltered, retired Lieutenant Eric Dim, who's a proud former United States Marine. And happy birthday again to the United States Marines on Monday, 250th anniversary of the United States Marines. So I want to say congratulations to everyone, and thank you so much again to all those who have served and continue to serve for our freedoms. That being said, also some sad news here in New York City. On November 8th, the FDNY suffered a horrific loss. Firefighter Patrick Brady, Ladder Company 120, died in the line of duty. So please keep Firefighter Brady's wife and family in your thoughts and prayers, as well as all members of the FDNY. His service information is as follows. His wake will be in the Marine Park Funeral Home, 3024 Quentin Road in Brooklyn. That's going to be Friday, November 14th, this coming Friday, from 2 to 4 and 7 to 9 p.m. So if you care to pay your respects, that would be the time. And his funeral is going to be at the Church of St. Francis de Sales in Rockaway in Bell Harbor, 12916 Rockaway Beach Boulevard, the corner of Beach 129th Street. That's going to be Saturday at 11 a.m. Parking is going to be very tough in the neighborhood, so they're going to be setting up bus service from the parking lot at Reese Park. So if you want to attend the funeral, and you can park in Reese Park and jump on a shuttle bus, and they'll be shuttling everyone in. So with that being said, I want to bring to the stage our special guest for the evening, retired Lieutenant Steve Weiss from the NYPD. So welcome, Steve.
Hey, good afternoon, Ron. Thanks for having me on the show. I just want to echo your sentiments. Veterans Day, very important that we recognize those who served. It's a day of great importance in this country, and it's important that we recognize those who have served. And to the family and coworkers of Pat Brady, a terrible tragedy. Most of us that have served, or all of us that have served, whether it be the police department or the fire department, have experienced that kind of loss, and it's never easy. And that family is going to be counting on the support. So a big turnout at the funeral means a lot for those families. I'm glad that you're able to give that information out to your viewers, and I hope that there's a huge turnout there to honor his service and his life.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I'm sure there will be. So great. Thanks for joining us. So why don't let's just jump right into it, because we got a lot to talk about. You had a great career, a lot of things that you've done with the job and as well as associated with and outside the job. and also your post-retirement career, and where you still remain active with a lot of things that you were involved with the police department, as well as what you're doing down in Texas. But first of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you grew up,
Yeah,
um, and what made you want to join the NYPD and law enforcement?
sure. I grew up on Long Island, in Merrick, which is on the south shore of the island. For those of you that don't know, it was um, like a normal childhood. I grew up in an air tight knit community. Neighbors and everything were friendly. I did not have any cop friends or family friends that were cops. Wasn't really that kind of area. There was mostly um, business people type jobs, teachers, lawyers, that type of stuff. But I had a fascination with the police from early on, and so I focused my energy on that, learning about law enforcement and learning about what it meant to be a cop and what the service was about. I guess I watched some cop shows on television, and it was just something that always interested me. I told my parents about it, and they said, "Hey, if that's what you want to do, if that's your passion, hey, John, good to see John. John, great guy. Worked with him in the 8-1, shot in the line of duty, and retired, and an outstanding patrolman. Really, really good guy. Thank you, John. It's good to see you on here." Um, and so I went to school. I went to college and majored in criminal justice. I did a little. I did this thing with the National Police Department where I would go in and buy beer, like underage, and I think we did something similar in the NYPD with the auxiliaries. That gave me a little taste of being involved with the cops, and I really enjoyed it. And so I focused on that. I took the police test in '96, like as soon as I could take it, and I moved. I got called right away, but I wasn't old enough, so I called them. I remember it vividly. I was laying in bed, my phone rang. I answered it. I said, "Yeah, you know how old I am?" The guy went, "Oh, sorry. We'll call you back in a few years." And and I got so I finished college, and I moved into the police academy in '99. So it was always focused on being a cop from as early as I can remember. And in fact, cleaning out my parents' garage when they moved, I found in a box a small booklet for the FBI National Academy that was I probably got in the '90s at some point. And as we'll talk about later, I ended up going to the NA. So I clearly had a focus on that very early in my life. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. And tell the councilman I said hello. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, fortunately, he's terming out, Bob. So
Yeah,
we're losing a good friend of the police department.
a great friend of the police department, somebody that's willing to stand up and say the right thing and defend the cops when they need to be and hold them accountable when they need to be. So it's a shame. It's a shame that the city's losing a good guy in that and in his terming out. So I went into the academy, 9941, and there I am. And then from finished the academy and went to the 6-7 precinct. And boy, I hit the jackpot going there. I really did. I started off with Harry Whedon as the CO, a absolute legend on the job, and he wanted the cops to learn how to be real cops. And by that, I mean, he wanted them to know how to go out there and handle radio runs. He wanted them to know how to handle the 53, the accident, how to handle the family dispute. But he also wanted them to go out there and how to find pick the perp, find that criminal on the street that's up to no good and develop enough to stop them, to take action on the quality of life offenses. He wanted well-rounded cops that could do everything from handle the EDP and the family dispute to go out and make a gun collar or a GLA collar, pick up a robbery in progress. And he led by example. I mean, he was out there. I mean, I was out there with him, and he put his hands on people when it was necessary. And so I learned a lot from him. I also was really fortunate in the training aspect. I had a couple of training officers that were fantastic. I had a gentleman named Mike Santacola, who was a Brooklyn South legend. He was the training sergeant, and he was another guy that was like, I want you to learn how to be the police. And I want you to do, and I'm going to teach you how to do it so you don't get in trouble. I had John Shell, who moved on to be the chief of department. And like John was the same way. He wanted us to learn how to take reports, how to go out there and make gun collars, how to do everything in between. And he was fantastic. And I had another guy, Brandon Del Pozo, who I kept in touch with, who wanted the same thing. He wanted you to learn how to be the police. And later on, he got me involved in some of this, some of the other things we'll speak about, the NYPD in Memoriam and the Full and Finest project. So I had another guy named Ray Farrell who was also really good. And so these guys were like veteran cops that wanted new guys to learn how to do police work. And so I learned that very quickly, how to go. In fact, I made my first collar with John Shell. We made a DV assault 2 collar in the Vanderveers, and walked me through it. Every time we took a report, every time we went out to a job, we talked about it afterwards. And, it sounds corny, like getting back into the car and kind of doing after action, but this is what these guys did. They wanted you to learn how to do it. And more importantly, they wanted you to learn why you were doing it. Like, okay, you stopped this car and you were able to search the car. Now let's go through why you're allowed to do that, because you're going to have to explain that to the district attorney at some point. Like, all right, that's great. You pulled the car over and you got a gun out of the trunk. Like,
it's one of the main things that's cut you off.
Yeah.
We talk about this all the time. It's one of the main things that's missing from today's NYPD is that mentorship, that leadership, that senior cop.
Yes.
Teaching the younger cops how to do it right and why they're doing it. And it's so important what you're saying here, that you got that foundation.
Yeah, and I'll say I'll double down on that and say the most important position in a precinct, and I don't know how the training is done now. I've been gone for 5 years, but the most important position in that precinct is the training officer for the new cops, because they have their hands on maybe 50. There was 20 people in my FTU, or 25 people. And so there was like 20, 25 people in my FTU. And, these five cops and the sergeant had a lot of responsibility, because they were going to shape potentially the entire career of all of us. So you could have a training officer that tells you, hey, don't do anything, just come in, do your 8 hours and go home, try to get some overtime. Or you can have the cop that says, hey, like, what we do is important. The people out here are important, even if you're dealing with the bad guys. Like the bad guy on bad guy crime, by solving that, you're preventing the bad guy on good guy crime, because that bad guy is not going to only victimize. It's not always going to be drug dealer on drug dealer, right? It's going to be drug dealer on regular person. So we want to make sure we address all that. They taught us the importance of kind of understanding what was going on in the precinct, what the dynamic was with the criminals, with the gangs, and getting that all done. And that's all the training officer, right? The training officer and the sergeant sets the tone for the cop's entire career. And so, like, when I was older on the job, I would tell new cops, like, pay close attention to who you're speaking with, who you're listening to, and what they're saying, because you're gonna very quickly judge who's leading you in the right direction, who's leading you in the wrong direction. Sometimes by what they say, and you can be like, that just doesn't sound right, or by how the other cops react to what they're saying. Where if they're just kind of giving them like that, all right, John, yeah, whatever you say, or if they're like listening intently. Thanks, John. Again, yeah, Mike was my partner in the 6-7. We were sergeants together. He's an 18-year crime sergeant in the 8-1, absolute legend, combat cross, 150 medal guy. We just got back from Chicago. We were there together this weekend to see the Notre Dame game and the Bears game. So that's that old school partnership. I mean, we started working together 25 years ago, and we're still great friends. And that's, I hope that stuff still goes on the job. I was out there with guys I'd worked with 15 years ago, 8-1 guys, 6-7 guys, their kids. And so thanks, John, for mentioning Mike. I mean, Mike, Mike is an unbelievable cop. And so that was FTU. And then I moved into, I don't know if I was fortunate or not fortunate, because I never really did traditional patrol. I would backfill, I would be in sectors a lot, but I was assigned to a unit called the Tracer Unit. And I worked with a fantastic group of guys there that did quality of life enforcement. I had a lieutenant, this guy, John Sullivan. He was a huge, big, just massive guy. And he was a cop in the 9th precinct back in when, I mean, I don't know how it is there now. But the 9th Precinct has a long history of being kind of a rough and tumble place in Manhattan. And he wanted us out there. He would give us our marching orders every day. All right, there was a couple robberies over here, go out, make some quality of life arrests, get them up to the squad, see if the squad could shake anything loose from them. That enforcement was really important, and the city lost a lot when they legalized marijuana, and that kind of tool went away. But we used it because it was a way of generating leads for the squad. And Danny Shoulders, who's the CO Highway 2 now, and another great guy that just expected a lot of his guys, and a group of other sergeants. Too many names to go through here, but those were like my early, like the guys early on in my career that really put me in the right direction. Harry Whedon moved on. Eventually became the chief of SOD, and then we had a CO for a short period of time, and I forget her name. She was only there for a couple months, and then Bobby Boyce came in. And again, I got lucky, right? I'm working with Harry Whedon, turns out to be is a legend, COD chief, 3-star chief. Then I get Bobby Boyce, ends up being the chief of detectives. He was the chief of he was the gang chief for a while, right? You could do a 50-part episode on Bobby Boyce's career. I mean, geez.
You just did an episode on the 10-4 Tavern. Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing this guy didn't do, and you could spend a year with him and still learn stuff. I mean, that's the kind of it was just dumb luck, right? Like I got all of these job legends to be mentors and to learn from early in my career. And so the first day the Chief Boyce was there, actually, we did it. My team, we did a search warrant. That was his first day there. We'd gotten a warrant and did that. And he eventually put me in the crime team. And we had a fantastic crime team. Again, I know I keep saying everybody's fantastic, but that's Mike Senecal, by the way, in the middle. But these guys these were top-notch cops, gunmen, all of them gunmen. That's all we did. With guns, we'd come across robberies and drugs every once in a while. But this is all we were doing. And that was my pre-crime days in the bag. And the crime team, we made gun collars, and then I think a lot of crime teams that were doing at the time, we would debrief our guys. We would get written statements from them. We would try to flip them for warrants. But I think that in 2004, we did 140 guns, and they were all walkers. I don't think we did one search warrant. We would try, but it wasn't a big thing back then. It was it just wasn't. You get a warrant if it was necessary, but you did just a lot of street work. And those things didn't get DP back then. We had a very good success rate in getting prosecuted, getting pleas. And we were really, we had a great group of guys, tight-knit group of guys. We hung out. We were all friends. There was no, there was a competition between the two crime teams, of course, who can get the most guns. If we both ended up working at the same time, who's going to get the first gun of the night, that kind of stuff. And I learned the importance of the court process there. So about that time, Brooklyn had a gun court. Yes, thank you, Alex. I'm glad you're watching. Brooklyn, thanks, JT. I appreciate that. I tried. Joe's the organized theft sergeant, I think.
Joe worked for me in the 115 and also in my blast unit. I brought him over to the blast unit when I was a CO.
He was the organized theft sergeant, right? Up in the
yes. And then he went on to organized theft into the squad.
Those guys did
phenomenal guy.
The work that those guys did. They would come into the squad. Joe would come into the squad and sit down in my office, and we were talking. He would tell me about these crazy gypsy scandals and all schemes and all this, and just he was an encyclopedia of this stuff, and he knew the names. And it was really fascinating to learn how these crimes happened and how they would move in and out of the areas and everything. Anyway,
listen, Joe. It's a testament to you. Joe's coming on when you're here, episode 38. 38 episodes in, it's the first time he's coming on my show. So appreciate you jumping in the comments, Joe. I love you, brother.
Ratings are up. Ratings are up. I love it. And so they had this gun court, and they had a DA, and it's the guys that work in Brooklyn will recognize this name, Sue Ellen Bienenfeld. And she sadly is no longer with us. I got along with Sue Ellen fantastically. She rubbed some people the wrong way because she wanted these cases to be tight, and she wanted you to be able to explain, or what they called articulate, right? What you did and why you did it, how you got to how you, yes. John mentions John Lawton. John Lawton ended up being my XO in the 104 squad, and just another great cop. I mean, uh, really paid attention to fine detail. He was the DV sergeant for a while. I want to say, was he in the 110 boss as the DV sergeant? And he was like, he was great with he was great with everything, and just a talented guy that really was dedicated to the job. So anyway, so Sue Ellen did all the gun cases, and I developed a relationship to her to where I could go in there and say, hey, Sue Ellen, like, this is a good collar, but this is not going to fly in court. We got to the gun the right way, but it's in the trunk of a mystery car with different plates on it. The VIN doesn't come back. We can't figure it out. There's 6 guys in the car. Like, it's a collar, everybody's under, but we're just never like you. And she'd be like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, good. It's a good collar. And it wasn't, they were DPing it because we did something wrong. It would just be like, it's just not provable, right? What are you going to do? Like, drop a 4-year felony on 6 guys in a car with no DNA on the gun, no prints, and like nothing tying them to it. And she was cool like that. So eventually she asked me to come in, and I developed a good relationship with a lot of the DAs in Brooklyn. And she'd asked me to come in and speak to the newly hired DAs. They would have their class, and I would come in during one of the sessions for like an hour block and speak to them about how to work with the cops, like what, where there were trust issues with the cops, because you had this, a lot of cops had this idea that, like, be bare minimum with the DAs because all they're looking to do is find that you perjured yourself or did something wrong, and they're looking to make their career off of that. And I found that not to be true. Some of these DAs I still talk to today, from 25 years, 20 plus 25 years ago. They were good people. They wanted to do the right thing, and so I would go in and I would speak to them about just how to get compliance from the cops, like why some things would happen, like why they would bitch and moan about the certain notifications, why every once in a while they would get a call and say, hey, I want to come down and talk about this case. Can I do it on Thursday? And can you notify me for the day tour? And explain to them, hey, listen, sometimes these guys can't get off. Like, they want to talk about a case, they need to talk about. They're looking to get the day tour because they want to go out with their wife. The kid has a bowl game. They weren't able to get off. And like, throw them the solid, and you're going to build that relationship. It's about building these relationships with everybody and getting. Is he talking about Christopher, the homicide?
So Chris was in the 104 squad.
Yeah, he was not when he was in the 104, but when I was in Queens, North Texas, he was the homicide lieutenant.
And Chris was in my company in the academy.
Yeah, I just saw him a couple weeks ago. He's a good dude, another guy with unbelievable knowledge. So just another example of how I got lucky and just happened to touch on all these guys. Yes, yeah. So even the current Brooklyn DA, he was part of that group that I dealt with. And so, but like, I learned a lot from that too, because I would sit with the DAs and we would talk about the cases and like why stuff didn't matter. Because I wanted to delve into the case a little bit. Like, why is this? I get you're DPing it, but explain to me why. Or this is good. Why should I have not done this? And what I took from that, and I took from these things that guys like Bobby Boyce and John Schell and Brandon Del Pozo kind of pushed at us. This was like when I get promoted, like I don't want to just go to roll call. I don't want to just talk to the cops and give them their assignment. I want them to learn a little bit. And so I would go and read a legal bureau rule and bring it to roll call and say, hey, look, like let's talk about the automobile exception, right? Let's talk about when you could search a locked compartment. Let's talk about these things. Or let's talk about tactics. Let's talk about how you get a guy out of the car so he doesn't take off running from you, like how you block the path and all that stuff. And so that's what I kind of took from that. So I did that while I was in crime. And then, I took the sergeant's exam, and I was like a 300 or something on the sergeant's list. And so the sergeant's list, I take the test, and the list comes out right after New Year's, I think. But I was involved in a shooting on New Year's night in 2004 into 2005. And right after that, yes, Eric John Schell. Bobby Boyce brings me into his office. And he says, Stevie, because I had been put on that monitoring for CCRBs, which is something we could talk about. Like, it wasn't because I had substantiated ones. It wasn't anything. It was just because of the number of them. And I was doing a lot of street work. So it came with the territory, but they didn't differentiate between substantiated and unsubstantiated, open ones versus closed ones. It was a sheer stick count thing. It didn't matter like how ridiculous the complaint. If the complaint said that they stuffed me in a spaceship and kidnapped me to Mars, like they would put that as a complaint, make it unfounded, and it would count against you towards
like you said, we could do a whole episode, and Eric could do a whole series, obviously, on CCRBs as the most complained cop. I think the difference was when you were a cop, when I was a cop, even though you got frivolous complaints, they weren't substantiated as easily as they are now. Now I believe they completely reverse engineer the case. Where how are we going to find them guilty? How can we get them, instead of let's look at this objectively. Did it happen? Why did it happen? And move on from there. Well, so there was a lot of CCRBs, but they weren't as substantiated as much and as punitive.
I agree with you. I mean, now that CCRB has a lot of power to prosecute the cops, but I'll give you an example. Thanks, Neil. Yeah. I mean, I would, as any squad commander knows, you spend a lot of time on the phone with the ADAs. But I also would I would also spend a lot of time when I was this SOL in the 7-1, when I was a sergeant, trying to explain why we did what we did and why they should move ahead with this. Why we should move ahead with this prosecution. So. What was I saying? Oh, so an example, I lost my train of thought there. So like we were talking about the CCRBs. And so an example, I think this would never happen today. So I was a sergeant in the 8-1, maybe it was 2008, maybe. And I'm out with this guy, Phil, that I worked with, who's also a great guy, just retired recently as a squad sergeant. And we go out and we go into the back of on Gates Avenue. These like housing projects that run along Gates Avenue, like 3-story or 4-story buildings that run the whole thing. We walk around back with a rookie that was on his foot post. He was a rookie that wanted to work. When we pulled up, he's like, "Hey, I think there's some guy smoking weed back there. Can you come?" Like, he was by himself. He's like, "We'll come back there." And we're like, "All right." So we go back there and we confront this guy that was smoking. This guy was 6'2", and unknown to us, he had laced his marijuana with PCP or something. And this guy was like a monster, and he hit me with a right that I'd never been hit like that before in my life. And the fight was on, and the guy Phil, he bites him. We end up fighting with this guy. The other kids hit him with the baton, the PR-24. We can't get this guy in cuffs, and somehow he ends up on top of me, like straddling me, and he's punching me in the head. Phil's got him in some kind of headlock. He's got his teeth locked onto Phil's arm. And so now I'm putting it over the radio. And now I'm like, all right, the only thing I can get to, he's reaching with one hand, trying to get to my gun. The only thing I have is the radio, right? So I hit him with the radio a couple times in the face. And finally, Phil's able to flop him off. A couple guys get there. And so I get a CCRB.
Was that the old Motorola's?
Yeah. The Motorola's were like, I mean, those things were heavy duty. Then they went to those Vortex ones with that stupid switch that would change the borough, and guys would be putting over 85s in Manhattan. They worked in Brooklyn or whatever. Yeah. Which happened. I think it was the Motorola. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. It was a long time ago. And so I get a CCRB for this. I don't know who the hell filed. This guy was a bad guy. As a matter of fact, he ends up getting prison time for this. He did like 3 years for assaulting me and this guy Phil. He gets out and he shoots. He ends up shooting a cop and ends up in prison for life. They hit him. They returned fire and hit him like 20 times, and somehow he survived that. And he's in prison. He was a bad dude. He'd done a stint in Pennsylvania also for like Molotov cocktailing his ex-girlfriend's apartment. He was a really bad guy. And so we get a CCRB and all these allegations. So I go down there and explain the story as probably in a lot more detail than I told here. And did you hit him with the radio? Yes, I did, like 5 or 6 times. And did you do this? Did you do that? Yeah, I did all that. I did everything. Why'd you do it? Well, the guy was going to kill me. He was on top of me. He had me straddled. I thought I was going to die that night. And it comes back like 2 months later as unsubstantiated, which is we don't know what happened. Like we can't figure it out, right? And so there's a couple of different possibles back then, at least. It was exonerated, which means you did it, but like the rules allow you to do it. There was unfounded, which means it's completely false. Unsubstantiated, which was like a lot of them. We just don't know. Like both stories sound credible. We don't know. And there was a few other ones. So I get this back and I call this. I'm like, I'm calling this lady, and the delegate's like, Steve, you don't do that. Don't call the CCRB investigator. I called her. And I said, hey, I got this letter back. Can you explain to me why this is unsubstantiated? She's like, it was what? I said, yeah. I said, I think you only have two choices here. Like I told you, I did every one of these allegations. So either you substantiate it because you're saying I did it and I shouldn't have done it, or you make it exonerated. I did it, but I'm allowed to do it under the guidelines. Like those are really your only two options here. I admitted to everything. There is no unfounded here because I've already told you this. You figured it out. I did it. And she was like, you know, something. I put it down as exonerated. This is the first I'm hearing this. Let me get back to you on this. And she calls me back like the next day, and she's like, I spoke to my boss. They're going to resubmit it because me and the boss don't agree with this. And I got another letter back like a month later that they had changed it to exonerated. And I think if that happened today, they probably wouldn't they probably would say that you were harassing them and everything. But so
it never would have came back. It never would have came back unsubbed. They would have been looking. They would have been looking to, refer to the district attorney's office. In today's CCRB in today's days, because you're not trained to use your radio, even though it's a life or death situation like you're talking about. Guy straddling you, just like you can't choke him, but he can choke you out, because then they get you for the diaphragm law. It's totally unfair the way everything is stacked up against the police nowadays. And like Eric is saying, he would have got charges for that. Yeah, we got charges, but he might have been looking at an indictment, or at least a grand jury inquiry in today's days. That's what I'm saying. It's so different. We've taken such a turn to the left that it's scary.
And that's why it's vitally important that the police commissioner retain the ability to have the final say on this, because CCRB makes some very questionable decisions, right? Very questionable. And you really need the police department. I mean, first of all, it's their personnel. So they should have, there's a million oversight, different like arenas that there's oversight in the police department, right? So this idea that there isn't any oversight if the police commissioner doesn't retain that is ridiculous, right? You got IAB, you got the inspector general, you have the state attorney general's office, right? You have the U.S. attorney's office overseeing some stuff. Internally, you have IAB, you have borough inspections, you have every precinct has an ICO. You have force investigation division. I mean, I could name probably 10 or borough. Every borough has an inspection or investigation. So there's a ton of oversight, and there's a bright light on the NYPD. Nothing's happening in the shadows with the cops. Now everybody's got a body worn camera. There's a million cameras around the city. Like you're not escaping anything. And so, if the police commissioner doesn't retain that, what you have is people with a very specific political agenda that will take control of policing, and it will change the way cops police, and it will make New Yorkers less safe. When you have cops that are afraid to do their job, that means New Yorkers are less safe, because when cops are afraid to do their job, the criminals get emboldened to do their job, which is to victimize the people, the good people in the city, and victimize each other, the bad guys too. So that's the CCRB story. So I'll just kind of move back. So I get Bobby Boyce pulls me into the office, right, because of the CCRBs. And I was just in a shooting. He says, Stevie, he called me Stevie. He says, Stevie, I want to see you wear gold. You're on the list. We're going to have you work with the community affairs sergeant. You'll do your thing. You can still go out. You can still make overtime. You can still get involved, but you got to just tone it down. Like crime is not for a guy that's like three months away from getting promoted. That's on monitoring. So I did that, and I had a great guy. And then one day I ended up bringing in like a bunch of guns, and he was like, "What are you doing, man? You don't listen." I remember we had him a little laid out. He was like, "Steve, come on, man. Like, wait until you get promoted, and then go run around and do this stuff again." So I get promoted, and so I had I had made a bribery collar at some point during all that, and the way it worked back then, I'm sure it still is. You go in front of that board, and you get a choice of like what you're going to do. And I said, I'd like to pick my transfer, like I had enough points or whatever it was to do, however it worked, but I'm getting promoted. So I'd like to defer that command pick until I get transferred. And they're like, we don't really do that, but where do you want to go? And they told me 8-1. And the guy goes, what? I said, yeah. He's like, people don't use these things to go to places like that. And I
Yeah.
said, well, I am. That's where I want to go. My old partner was there. Like I knew a bunch of the guys there from hanging out with them and my old partner. I said, I want to go to the 8-1. And they're like, all
It's
right, that's
funny.
what.
It's funny you say that because I had the exact same scenario where I had a bribery collar, and it's unfair too because only the arresting officer gets to go in front of
Yes.
the board.
Yeah. Completely unfair.
Your partner gets the EPD or whatever it is
Yeah.
with you, but you're the only whoever's name goes on the paperwork, and it's both of you unless your partner's zero and you didn't all talking, but you always shared everything with your partner, and
Right.
only the arresting officer can go in front of that review board. And I got the same choices, and I was getting ready to get promoted to sergeant, and I asked because I didn't really know anybody. And I asked, I says, can I? And they said no. They just outright told me no. So
Yeah.
I just took the 5 extra career points or whatever, thinking maybe in the future I could use it or whatever because they don't
Right.
expire. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. So yeah, it's funny you say that.
Yeah. So I used that. So I put down the 8-1 on that dream sheet too. I think there was 2 sergeants going to the 8-1 from my BMOC class. And so I end up in the 8-1, and I do patrol there for a number of years, and that place was a madhouse. And that place was a gun factory. Like it was. I mean, it was a small precinct, but the amount of people carrying guns in that place was just like, oh my god, it was crazy. And so I end up I was the FTU sergeant for a while, which I took happily. Like that, like I had a small group of people, and I'm like, all right, I get a chance to mold a couple of cops into real crime fighters, people that are going to be competent, that they're not going to get themselves in trouble, that are going to know how to speak to the DA, know how to speak to bad guys, know how to debrief perps, like how to read what's going on in a scene and everything. And we had a great time. And they made gun collars, and they made DV collars, and they made 511 collar. Like they made everything from the collar that everybody giggles at to the great collars, pickup guns and robberies, and we had a good time. And so they moved on. They were all in squads. Some of them are retired now, which is crazy when I think about it. Like even there, I'm like, I train guys that are retired. Like how old am I? One guy ended up being like the master trainer for the tasers for the job, and I think he works for them now, doing training for Axon. And it was a great experience. I moved from there to the condition sergeant. My old partner Mike had that crime spot locked up. He was never moving. He was there for 18 years as crime sergeant. So conditions was as far as I was going there, as far as specialty units. And I had a good group of guys, and Mike and I, my old partner, talk about this a lot. Is like we did a lot of great stuff on the job between the two of us. A lot of great collars. We're involved in a lot of great stuff. Mike has a combat cross. Like between the two of us, hundreds of medals. But all that stuff is great. What we're both of us, we talk about that. We just talked about this like 2 nights ago, is the success of the people that worked for us. Like that legacy of there's guys that, and a few of them have been on here, and they're not back patting, but a couple have been on here. Oh, this guy was a good guy. Like that's how you like to be remembered. Like you took care of the people that worked for you. You steered them in the right directions. When they did get themselves in trouble, you helped them navigate it so it wasn't life altering or the end of their career. And you taught them how not to get involved in that again. And they advanced. They became sergeants, lieutenants, first grade detectives, captains. Guys that work for me now that are chiefs, and it's gratifying to see that it's a small part of it, right? Because people make their own path. But like I said earlier on, like that first interaction with actual street policing and the people that train you can make or break a person's career. You get the wrong person in that training spot, that it's no good. And so that was a great experience. And so then the conditions guys, the same, like I worked with them. We did a lot of guns. We did a lot of robbery collars, but we also did condition stuff, right? We'd hit the parks at night, but that stuff was important. That was all part of Bratton's idea of addressing the little stuff, and it has a big impact on the crime rate, because we saw it all through my career. Like the crime rate just plummeted. and the neighborhoods were completely different from what they were 15 years before or 20 years before. And the numbers prove it. But the quality of life, people felt safer. And that was a big Bratton
Yeah.
thing. Because he
And
would say, like,
go ahead.
how people feel is really important. Like, it's great to have no crime, but if people feel like the place is a dump and they're going to get victimized, then you have to do something to address that also, even if they might not get robbed, right? Like, they feel like they're going to get robbed. And that was the idea of going into buildings and getting people out of the hallways, getting people out of staircases. You don't want some 55-year-old lady that's coming home from her overnight at the hospital as a nurse, having to step over a guy smoking weed, a hallway filled with urine. Like, they want to feel safe, even if there's no actual physical danger to them. They want to feel it in them that they're safe.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because especially in today's administration, right? You look at a lot of the banter and information that's put out, and they talk about the biggest crime reductions that have been happening in years, and the lowest amount of shootings that have been happening in years, but people aren't walking the streets feeling that safe. So you talk about the perception of a reduction in crime versus feeling it, and I think the difference is, and I mean we'll get into it later, because I know you intimately know how the crime statistics work,
Yeah.
with the job, and how they are sometimes manipulated within commands and downgraded or not reported and things like that. We've talked about that on the show recently. A transit commander lost his command because he was downgrading crimes, or not taking crimes properly. But it's so important, like you said, when we did that quality of life work, right? When we did that broken windows policing, people, not only did the crime numbers go down because the smaller things affected the bigger things, but like you said, people felt it. You didn't drive around, you didn't see all the graffiti that you see again today. You don't see all the vagrants on the corners and the homelessness as pervasive as it is now, because we had the homeless outreach unit, and we were addressing things differently. So like, what you started to mention it and talk about it, and it just resonated, because we talk about that all the time on the network, and on all the platform here, and the job keeps pushing it out, the mayor keeps pushing it out, about the reduction in crime. I have a different view sometimes as other people on the network, because of my understanding of how crime statistics are. And people think that sometimes you're playing the numbers game, because listen, the fact of the COVID period, and the fact that nobody was out on the street, does put a big skew into when you're doing comparisons. You got to look at things pre-COVID versus now, kind of take out those certain time frames when there really was nothing going on. But you also hear a lot, and I think social media has a lot to do with it, because there's a lot of stuff going on social media. People talk a lot on social media, that people aren't reporting the crime that is happening, because they feel that nothing's going to happen about it.
Yeah, they call that the dark figures of crime, and there's a lot to be said, and it's different groups have different reporting rates for crime, and different types of crime get reported or underreported. And so, I think that there's probably been an increase in that. If they don't have confidence in the police department, either they don't trust them for whatever political reasons, or they just don't trust that they have the manpower, the resources to address what they think is something that they're just not going to, that's not going to be investigated. They're not going to, like, I got robbed. They got my wallet and a couple of credit cards. I cancel the credit cards, and that's it. And I don't report the robbery, because I don't want to go to the precinct and look at the photos. I don't want to get called down to court if they make an arrest. I don't want to get involved. And so people don't do that. It won't report for a variety of reasons, but that's part of it, is the process, right? And so the 8-1 was an interesting place. I mean, I was there during the whole Schoolcraft thing, where he made all these allegations. I was subject to some of them, and he pointed his finger at just about everybody, and it turned out at the end almost everything he said wasn't true. I think at the end of the whole thing, what they came up with was a couple of misclassified 61s that weren't anywhere any different from like the citywide average of just misclassified 61s that happen because sometimes they're complex. There wasn't any concerted effort to downgrade crimes. I mean, I was there. It just wasn't happening. And I ended up I got he made allegations I stole records to get promoted, all silly stuff like, CCRB records are computerized, right? They're on the CCRB computer. There's no place you could just go steal them from. And it's not 1940 where you just, rip the thing up and it never happened. And, it shook the precinct, right? I wasn't there for the whole thing that happened at the hospital. I had left by then, but I was involved in that I made and this is all documented in books and everything. So I made observations in his memo book of comments that he had in there. He had a little scratch pad in there. He would write really weird stuff. I observed a possible FBI agent coming in through the back door, meeting with the precinct command, like really weird stuff. And I questioned what was going on with him, like his mental state. And, nobody really knew what to do. And so we ended up calling like early intervention. And they were like, I don't know, send it over here. And I found some information on some stuff that happened with his family and sent it over there because I was really concerned about the guy. Like he was acting really bizarrely. And, I had kind of pushed the idea of doing one of these IO9s. I don't know what they call it now, but that's the temporary removal of firearms, non-disciplinary removal.
Yeah, non-disciplinary
evaluations.
Okay.
Yeah. And like that didn't happen. And then this whole thing, then, I get promoted. I go to the 7-1, and then this whole thing happens with the hospital and all that craziness. But it was an interesting time. But he definitely dragged a lot of good people's name through the mud, and it was unfortunate to see. I mean, it didn't. I don't think it really, other than the precinct CO, I don't think it really held up anybody's careers. But it grew legs in the media. It grew legs with a couple of news organizations, and it was a tough time. So like I left, I missed all that. I ended up in the 7-1 as a platoon commander, and I hit the ground running there. And it's a odd, rare photo of me on the desk. I do patrol there, and I had a blast. I had great patrol cops. I end up as the SOL pretty quickly. It was Pete Simonetti was the CO, and he was like, Steve, you're going to take over the special ops spot. And Jack Lewis ended up becoming the CO later. And that's another mentor of mine. And like kind of skipped over Jack in the 6-7, but he was in the 6-7 also. Like this is a guy that taught me like the importance of good decision making and the importance of like not acting out of anger and frustration. That was a big one for him. Like do not act out of anger and frustration, which is always going to lead you down the wrong path. The importance of training the new guys and the importance of the integrity of your work and all this. Like Jack and we still talk. I mean, he's another Brooklyn legend. So I do this. I do the special ops. And, special ops is a demanding position, right? Like you've got the crime team, you've got the SNU team, you have the conditions team, you have the school team, you have the auxiliary team, you have the domestic violence team. Community affairs kind of falls under the SOL. So that was my office in the 7-1. My now not so little guy that's driving a car. Entering, I think he must be entering a 61 or something. That's West Indian Day parade, getting ready for the West Indian Day parade. Because 1 year it's Brooklyn South and 1 year it's Brooklyn North, and the 7-1 was the 7-1 and 7-7 were like the focal point of that whole thing. So, the SOL was a great spot, but you have to go to ComStat, and that's where I learned how to present to ComStat and what they were looking for at ComStat. And I got that kind of put me more in touch with like what's the deal with what are the numbers they're always talking about? Like what are we doing with this? Because you kind of have an idea about it as a sergeant. As a cop, you're mostly oblivious to it. If you're a street guy, you're just looking to make gun collars and robbery collars. But as you move up in the ranks, like your job gets a little bit more administrative and you have different responsibilities. And one of those things is crime statistics and looking at areas and seeing how you're going to deploy personnel because of certain problems. Like you don't want to have a problem in Sector Adam and have all your people in Sector King, right? Like that's just it's not good personnel management. And so that stuff became important. So you spend more time in the office than some of us would like to, but you have to. And I learned a lot doing that. And I had some talented people. I had a really good crime team with some good crime sergeants that were able to motivate their personnel to get out there, to work well with the squad. Like that was important to me also, was like forming a good relationship with the squad so that like they would be comfortable coming to you and saying, hey, here's what we're looking. My guys would go up there, right? What are you looking for? Before they had the phones, right? You had to actually go up and talk to these guys and get wanted posters and figure it out. Now it's all in that crime, what do they call those? CIC on the phone. But before they had to go up there and like, if you didn't build a relationship with them, they kind of, these guys were crusty old squad guys. A lot of them had got on the job in the 70s and the 80s, and they were like, what do you want, kid? So you had to build relationships and show that you were like trustworthy and you were looking to do the right thing. And so that was important to me. And so I learned a lot in the 7-1 about that, the management side of the job, because I was doing that SOL spot. And we did a lot of good work there. And the 7-1 is a really unique place, right? Because you have the Lubavitch Jewish community, you have different sects there that are kind of we're battling it out a little bit, and then it's an American Black area, and they live together pretty peacefully. But you have flare ups. It was very different, very different policing than like the 8-1 or the 6-7, because it was a lot more diverse community than those other communities. And so you had to build relationships there. That was a big relationship place. You had to build relationships with the leaders of those communities, and they liked me, maybe partially because I'm Jewish, and the Jewish community there liked me. I mean, that gave me some kind of immediate credibility with them. And so even though I wasn't, a Lubavitch or part of the sex, it just made things easier. I don't know, it just did. So we would get they were good crime fighters too. We'd get calls from them all the time. There's a guy breaking into a car down here on Lincoln Avenue or whatever, Lincoln Road. And like, all right, we'd shoot over there. Like they were like legit eyes and ears. They would call all the time. They would see stuff going on. And Jack built a great relationship with them. Pete Simonetti had a good relationship with them. George Fitzgibbon took over towards the end, and he knew the relation. I mean, he was another great street guy, and he knew the lay of the land there, and was able to build those relationships. And at some point along the line, Jack comes to me and he says, "Steve, you've been doing this for a long time. Like, you haven't let up with the street stuff, with everything that you do. Like you're working nonstop. You're working with all your units. You're a crime guy in the 6-7. You were doing this kind of work in the 8-1. Like, how? Let's take a look at. So not a lot actually, John, because it was the 6-7, the 7-1, the 8-1, Night Watch, the 115 squad, Crime Control Strategies at the headquarters, and then the 104 squad, and then that's 2 months at the FBI Academy. So not a lot. And so he said, why don't you think about putting him for the bureau? So, okay. It sounds like good. I like that. That sounds fun. Like it's a different type of policing. Investigations should be a lot of fun. Something appealed to me about, showing up at a crime scene and not knowing who did it, whether it be a murder or robbery, and a team of just talented detectives figuring it out, right? Finding that piece of information that leads them to it. And so I put him for the bureau. And I interviewed in Brooklyn, but I get a call from, I forget who it was, somebody in the chief detective's office, and says, "Hey, there's a couple of commands in Queens that we're looking at. Would you have any interest in going over there? We get you over there real quick." And I was like, all right. Like and they told me, like, if you don't like Queens, you go back to Brooklyn. And I never worked in Queens. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
And so
Queens Marines, right? That's all you heard.
But I'll tell you this, I worked in the command, like the 115 was a busy command. It wasn't the 105 or the 113, but it was a lot of stuff going on. And once you hit that border of the 110, as you well know, Roosevelt Avenue.
I worked both sides of it, right?
Roosevelt Avenue was like,
I was the impact captain in the 115 and the CO of the 110, so I got both sides of it.
So I end up in night. So I go in and I interview with the chief, who's John Essick. And he had been the XO for a very short period of time. Again,
what do they call him? The good Essick?
to go. So like as as so again, as fortune would have it, like even if it's small touches, right? Like you make impressions on people and people make impressions on you. Like he was there for a very short period of time when I was there, but he remembered me. And because I drove him like once or twice, like by dumb luck, like the first week he was there, I was coming up from the locker room. He was like standing by the desk and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm going to roll call." And he's like, "No, I need a driver. Come with me." And I was like, "All right." And we went out, we made a couple pinches together, and like, and then that was it. He was gone, I was gone, and that was it. Like, and then a couple years later comes back around and he's like, "All right, let me um I go in interview. He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember, you're good. I know you're competent." And so you build these relationships, and you're the relationship building and the reputation you build on the job are very, very important, right? And they can open doors for you. They make the job easier. They make it fun to go to work, right? You build these great relationships and friendships, but they open doors for you. They allow you to help, like as you move up, you can help your cops because you have that phone call to make, not because you're looking to try to get something for some guy that never did any police work and now he's looking for some assignment that he doesn't deserve. It's for that guy that, like, for whatever reason he can't get over the hump into that unit he's looking to get to, but he's making a ton of collars. He's out there making good collars. He's a smart cop. He doesn't get in trouble. He's got an ear tickler of Iraq, but for whatever reason, like, I don't know, it just like his application just doesn't make it through. And that's the guy you want to help out because he deserves it. And you can do that by building relationships earlier in your career and then kind of cashing in on that later on. So,
Yeah. I say that I say it all the time on the show, and I give credit to Joe Fox on this. I know you've worked with Joe Fox also. That people think you have to know somebody on the job to advance your career and to get places, and that's not always true. It's not always who you know; it's who knows you. And you just described it perfectly by your work ethic, your reputation, going out there. People will recognize you when you're doing your job and you're doing your job proficiently, and they know that you're professional about it and they know you care. And like you said, you worked for all these people. John Shell was your training sergeant. Winds up being the highest uniform ranking member of the service. You work for Bobby Boyce. He winds up being one of the best chief of detectives in the history of the job. Brandon Del Pozo, he moved up to be a chief and then running a police department in another agency. All these people, that you make relationships with going up, not because you're boys with them, not because you're drinking buddies with them, not because whatever. You work with them, work for them, or even not even. Like I'll give a quick example. Chief Jimmy Hall. Yeah. I didn't even know that he knew who I was. I worked for him briefly when he was the XO of Queens North, and I was in Queens North. Didn't know that he had, quote unquote, followed my career. And then when he became the chief of patrol, he actually went into Kelly, because Kelly had an image about me about something that was kind of holding me back from advancement. And he went in and laid out my career. And that's when my career started. I got my first command. I wound up getting a promotion. So again, it's just he happened to know me. He knew my career, and I didn't even know that at the time. So I agree with you 100% on what you're saying there.
I'll tell you. I'll give you one guess, and then I'll tell you how many people you think I knew when I came on the job that were cops, cops, chiefs, any rank, from patrolman to chief of department. One. I knew one guy. He was a highway cop. I played hockey with him. I was on an ice hockey team with him. We were good friends. He was in my wedding party when I got married. And like, that was it. And thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. That was it. So all the relationships I have now, all the at every rank, all the people that I talk to, whether it be the guy that stayed a cop for 20 years and liked doing patrol, the guy that went to the squad and became a first grade detective, to the guy that became chief of department, chief of detectives, chief of transit, chief of housing, whoever it was. Like, I knew all those guys because I built the reputation during my career that I was, well, first thing is competent, right? Like, competent and not an asshole. And and maybe one or two people might have said I was an asshole, but
They didn't. You weren't doing your job.
yeah, right. But like competent was the thing. Like, all right, I could trust this guy. Like if I hand this guy something, I know at the other end I'm going to get a great result. Like he's not going to half-ass it. He's going to put in the extra effort to make sure it gets done correctly, and he's going to come back with me the result. And if he's not sure how to do it, he's going to figure it out. He's going to find out. He's not going to just make something up. And so I built those relationships through the years, and like Essex was one of them. So I end up in Night Watch for a very short period of time. And then the 115 opens up, and that is not a squad that they generally send a first-time squad commander to.
No,
they don't.
Heavy house.
Yeah. So, but Essex calls me up and he says they had just had like a triple shooting. Three guys got shotgunned in the face with a sawed-off shotgun, and he says, "Hey, Steve, they just had that shooting in the 115." I said, "I know. I was on Night Watch. We just got back." He goes, "We'll go over to 115. It's your shop now." I said, "Oh, okay." And so I show up there, and I'm like, "How you guys doing?" I'm the boss now. And so I worked there, and it was an experience. Like I learned a lot very quickly. I learned, part of being I think being a good and effective boss is knowing when you don't know something, right? Like a lot of times people don't realize what they don't know, but there's a lot of stuff I did not know about the Detective Bureau, right? Like I studied for the test before I went to the bureau. Right? I sat down with squad commanders. I talked to them. I would sit in the squad when I knew I was going. But like, you don't really get the full taste of it until you're in a squad. You definitely don't get the taste of it in Night Watch, right? Like you don't at all. And I had a Night Watch sergeant that would get annoyed with me because I would be going out there. One night we had on Bell Boulevard, we had a guy get his throat slashed in a bar, and he grabs his ex-girlfriend and throws her in a car and like vanishes with her. And I'm like, it's like 3:00 in the morning. I'm like, shit, this is like a kidnapping, right? So we called some other resources, but in the interim, I have like the Night Watch guys checking a bunch of locations. I have the plate on the car. I have RT's a real-time alert on the plate and all this stuff. And we end up tracking the car to some place in Queens that we figured out who the guy was. That wasn't hard. We just couldn't figure out where he was or where she was. And we end up tracking. We get like an LPR hit on the car parked somewhere, and we end up going there. And we grabbed the guy. He almost got himself shot because he came out with a knife. But we grab him. We get the girl. We bring him back. And the Night Watch sergeant, the guy that was the sergeant, wasn't in that night. But he comes in the next day. And he was like, "We don't do this stuff." And I'm like, "Don't do what? Police work? What are you talking about? Like, what should we have done? Tell me, what would you have done here? What would you have done? Just done a couple of DD5s and sent it off to the squad. In the meantime, this girl's held captive in there. Like, this is what we do. We're the police, and thankfully, those guys are far and few between. But like that happened, but after that, those Night Watch guys, like it was gold. They were like, "Wow, this was the most fun we've ever had in this unit." One guy had like his daughter got very badly injured in a car accident, and I just ran him on the roll call and made it work so he could go sit with her in the hospital. And again, the guy was like, "What are we going to do with manpower?" I said, I really don't care. Like, we're going to make this work. You want to know what you're going to do? You're here. If you have to, you're going to do the 5s. So this guy can go sit with his girl. Like, I'll do them. Like, you're going to do them. I'll do them. We'll make it work. So this guy can go sit with his daughter while she recovers because she was in like a coma or something. Right. And like, he's not coming to work. He's not. We'll run this with one guy if we have to before I make that guy come into work. Like, we'll just pull somebody from a squad if I'll call the chief. So, and like, so you build those relationships. So I built relationships that way by standing up for my guys. So I go to squad, and so I learned from these guys, all right, like how to run a case, like I had in my mind what was important, right, and I had my Steve Weiss way of how I think things should be done, but not everything I thought in my mind was like the right way to do it or would work. I was not a big fan of that's the way we always do things mentality. That this is what happened. This is before COVID. I literally came in with like the sniffles one day. I go into the office, close the door to talk to like the borough, what do they call him, the zone commander, and I opened the door to this. Like I sneezed walking into my office, and this is the kind of fun you would have in a squad, right? Like this to me was just like, I'm so glad they took that photo when I opened that door. And so I was able to adjust like what my expectations were of the detectives, but I had some very specific stuff that I thought was important. in cases, like being very detailed in the report writing. And some of the guys were not detail oriented as I wanted them to be. I hated things like the complainant was walking up the street in a thing. Well, what does that mean? Up isn't a direction. North, south, east, west. Like give me the path so we can go visit. Like I wanted really specific stuff more than a paragraph of if it was necessary. And some people took to that pretty quickly, and some people it was a harder sell. But part of selling is explain why it's important.
Yeah.
Like, what's the benefit of this? I'm not asking you to do this because I want you to sit in front of your computer. By then they were on computers; they weren't on typewriters anymore. And some of the younger cops will be amazed to hear, like, we used to sit in front of typewriters and bang out vouchers and everything. And if you messed up the voucher, you had to, with your tail between your legs, you had to go to the desk officer and have him put that big void on the thing, and he would yell at you and everything. But yeah, so they were on computers, so they could easily. And I would tell them that too. I'm like, you're not typing on a typewriter. Like, if you make a mistake here, you can fix it pretty easily. It's a word processor. Like write it out in Word first, and then cut and paste it into the 5, so the thing doesn't like log you out. And what happened to all that hair? A combination of my kids and a lot of police work got rid of the hair. I was, I felt like I was able to learn what needed to be done and then apply that to what, like, the cases to improve my ability to lead that squad, and also to improve their ability to investigate their squad. Give me a second to read this right here, because that's a long one. One of the great lessons we should see is the importance of caring for your team at work and also needs about. Yeah, well, so John mentioned something really important here, is the personal affairs, and it was something that was overlooked on the job and throughout all policing for a very long time, right? Like, taking care of your guys always meant like making sure they got the right assignment, making sure they got the RMP with the air conditioner work, that they didn't have the milk box holding the seat up, like if they were the veteran guy, that kind of stuff. Making sure they got a promotion. It didn't mean making sure they took care of their mental health and making sure they took care of their family all the time, right? And listen, policing is what it is. You're going to miss baseball games, right? You're going to miss family events. You're going to miss a Thanksgiving. Like, you're going to miss those things. But making sure that you're able to sprinkle in and make sure that everybody gets a touch on all that stuff is important. It does wonders for their mental health, but also for their productivity, right? Like, an unhappy cop is not a productive cop.
Very good.
And so it was important to me for that. And John really was great at that also, like having conversations with the cops and talking more than just about police work. Because everybody's got something going on crazy in their life, right? Their kid is sick, there's something going on with their spouse, their parents are this, they had a fight with their friend. And so, my kids love to come to the precinct. And that photo up at the top left is my ex-wife's grandfather, and interesting story. He was a great cop, and he was very excited when I got on the job. His wife's brother was a cop in like the early part of the century, and so their grandson is on the job now, and he was able to get I want to say he got his grandfather's shield and his great-grandfather's sergeant shield. He's a sergeant now. And I was the only guy on the job at all of them, so I was able to pin him with that. But I kept a picture up there to remind me, because he had a lot of integrity and he loved the job. And so, what was I saying? I went off track with the.
No, we was talking about work-life balance, and
the work-life balance is really
taking care of your people.
And I think the job is
what expectations of your detectives to be, very detailed, which is so important, when the case comes up later on.
So, yeah. And so then at some point I had put in for the FBI Academy. They put out I forget what the thing is that they put out, where they ask for people to apply to stuff. This personnel orders is whatever that order is that comes out, and it was, in there. And so I applied for it one time and I didn't get it. And then I applied for it a second time. And this is, again, where building relationships was important, because I felt like I had earned the right to go there. Like, I had done a lot of work on the street. the officer down stuff I had done, which we haven't even spoken about yet, but that was part of my identity on the job. And I had a few years in the bureau at that point, and so I put in for it again. I wrote this, an essay of like what my intent was, and I get a call one day that I got it, and I went in July of 2016. So we're coming up on our 10th year anniversary now that we're planning to get together on. And I went into the meeting with the handler from the FBI at the New York field office. And one of the things he tells us is, hey, like, the NYPD guys haven't really been the section representatives in a long time. Like, see if one of you can do that. It'd be great for the department and everything. And so I went there, and with the intent on like learning from these other executives. Now, for those of you who don't know what the FBI Academy is, it's a 10-week training. It's a leadership training at the FBI Academy in Quantico. So we're there. We have our own classes. They're graduate level classes and some undergraduate level classes taught by FBI instructors. That was my section after the Yellow Brick Road run. And it's people from all over the United States, mostly in executive positions. The NYPD sends lieutenants and above. Most of these departments will send like chiefs or assistant chiefs. Some of the small departments where it goes from like cop sergeant to chief, it'll be a sergeant, but the sergeant is like the second in command of the department. And you take these classes. I took a media relations class. I took a crime scene class. I took a couple other really interesting public speaking, which is like an important skill for policing, especially as you move up. And so I went there. I had this great roommate, Solberg, that was from Iceland. He was like a high-ranking member, Solberg, high-ranking member of the Icelandic police department. And we had a great time. Like, we did stuff on weekends. You don't go home. You could stay there the whole time. I went home one weekend for a wedding and for the New York trip where you take everybody up to New York. And I mean, I was learning from the best. Like, you learn in the classes from the best the FBI has to offer as far as instructors go, and then you learn from each other. And this is a great example. Like, this was a project we did, and I was presenting on the re-engineering project that Bratton did the second time he was around. I know we did one the first time. The second one was a lot bigger. And like how that worked, like how it was structured, what was implemented, how it was implemented. And these are guys that are chiefs of their departments or assistant chiefs, or are going to end up being in those positions. And so you all learn from each other. It's a great networking thing. Like, you stay in touch forever. You can call these guys day or night for anything. And I end up, and the physical fitness stuff was like, it was hardcore. The only thing they don't do there is tactics, right? Because every department teaches that differently. So they don't do any tactics stuff. It's all classroom stuff, and then this physical fitness. That's the Yellow Brick Road, which is the final challenge, which is the Marine Corps obstacle course at Quantico, and that's the right outside the gym. And I think if you're a fan of Silence of the Lambs, I think that's what makes that tree famous. And so I end up being elected as the class spokesman, which is basically the class president. And I got to tell you, I've gotten a lot of awards in my career. I don't know that there's any greater honor than having a group of 200 plus police executives from around the country say, this is the guy we want to represent us at the graduation. Here's me giving the commencement speech. This is the person we want representing our class. It was unbelievably humbling. I think about it now, and I'm still just amazed that not because I didn't think I didn't deserve it, just like to have come in there and built very quickly that reputation with everybody that like, he's dependable. He's the guy we want. Like, this is our representative. And, it was cool. I don't know if I've ever seen my parents prouder. Maybe the day I got on the job. And, I gave the speech at the end that really focused in on what we had learned and how we were going to use it. And I still remain in touch with a lot of these people that I was there with. And they, we had great times together, whether it be at the academy, in the classes, exchanging stories. Outside, we went on the weekends we go whitewater rafting. We went to a preseason football game. It was the preseason baseball games. Like we did every DC. We went to the Pentagon, sort of Marine One. Some guys went to the White House. I didn't go that trip, sadly. And then, and I'll give you an example of how important this is. I get back to New York and I go back to my squad, and they give me a very nice cake with my picture on it, and I was delicious. I ate the cake, and I was very delicious. And about a month goes by, and one of my detectives comes to me. He goes, "Hey, you remember this robbery from a couple of years ago? We had this guy ID'd. We can't find him." I'm like, "Yeah, I actually do remember that." He's like, "Well, I got a call from his mother. His mother got a call from him. I got a new cell phone number. I'm getting a pen registry. We're going to go up on the phone and try to track this guy." I'm like, "All right." So he calls me like a day later. He's like, "They're up on the phone. It's in Hollywood, Florida." And he's like, "Well, I'm pinging it there." I said, "Oh, no problem." Get on my phone. I called the chief of Hollywood, Florida PD because he was in my FBI Academy class. And I say, "Hey, what's up? Listen, I got, bullshit. I got this guy. He's pinging right now. He's at the mall in Hollywood." And he's like, "All right, my guy's just got finished with a warrant. He's like, forward me the pings. We'll grab him. What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, hold him. We'll fly down there and get him." Right. And he calls me back like 25 minutes later. He's like, "I got the guy in custody." Right? And that was the value of those relationships. But I mean, it's really for anything. Like we have a group chat, like, "Hey, does anybody have a policy on this? What do you do with that?" Like when the body cameras became a big thing, what do you do with accidental, like what's your policy for accidental activations of the body camera, right? Because, hey, listen, guy goes to the bathroom, he turns the thing on by accident. Next thing you know, you got a video of a stream. You don't really, it's not what you're looking for on the body worn camera or worse. And so things like that, right? Like, what do you do with this? And there's just immensely valuable. And it goes beyond even the people in your class. Like once there's that connection, like NA, and where I live now, like my police chief in my town's an NA grad, the next town over is an NA grad. Like I was able to form relationships even down here in Texas through that NA connection. And it also adds legitimacy because when I got the job, and we'll talk about that later in Dallas, and I have to work with the cops at the police department a lot, like there was an immediate legitimacy there to who I was and what I was looking for because I went to the NA. I mean, there's very few people get to go. And it was such a great experience, and I still proud of the brick right there. I mean, it's a big part of my identity. And so I came back, I continued in the 115 squad, and then I get a call from this guy. God, I can't remember his name. He was a funny looking guy. Ron Layson was his name. He calls me up and he said, "Hey, Steve."
Oh, wait, Steve, before we move there, Steve, wait.
I got you good.
Listen, did you hear what I said before you said it? I said there's plenty of us out there. And I didn't know you were talking about me.
Yeah.
But we went past it really fast. And there's a lot of people active, retired, obviously a lot of people that you had worked with over the career that through your network of us posting out that you were coming on the show today or in the chat. But we have a lot of people, NYPD, non-NYPD, law enforcement from around the country and all the other things. One of the things that we do ask, and how deep you want to get into it or whatever your case may be, is your experience, because we zip past it because there's just so much in your career. But you were on the job. We're coming up. It's going to be the 25th anniversary soon enough. Could you share with us your experience about 9/11?
Yeah, it's crazy how we zip past that, and we also zip past when I was in the 6-7. I feel horrible now that this didn't come up then. Is Bobby Parker and Pat Rafferty, who were two guys that were fantastic detectives that I was in crime, so I had some interactions with them, and they were both shot and killed at going to a DV, trying to apprehend a DV perp. And I actually wasn't working that night. It was, of all things, it was a birthday party in Jersey City for my partner, Mike. And I remember getting a call on that. And, I went home and then went into work. And, then maybe 2 nights before I went out with me and 2 or 3 other guys in my team, went with Parker to try to apprehend the guy I forget, it was in Project somewhere in Brooklyn North. And Bobby was a big guy. And so I forget who was driving. I forget the setup of the car. All I know is he was in the back seat for some reason. And I'm in the back seat, and this other guy, Jeff, is in the back seat, who was a big guy too. And Bobby opens the door and he looks in, and we get the whole, almost the whole back. He goes, oh, he has this deep voice. He goes, big guy. He's talking to the other guy. You're going to have to move over. And like he squeezed in there, and we went up there and everything. And that was the last time I ever saw him, when we got back. And so like that was also one of those things that happens in your career that you hope never happens. Like, you hope you go through your entire career and nobody you work with gets seriously injured, gets shot, or is killed in the line of duty. And, it was.
Fortunately, most of us
don't
avoid that.
Brotherhood, like what the brotherhood really was about, policing, how you take care of the families, how you take care of each other, like, how the other commands took care of us and came and covered for us, and just what happened there around that whole thing. And so for 9/11, interestingly, so I was doing like 6 to 2s. And so the day of 9/11, I get a phone call that morning, kind of groggy, and I had an answering machine. Remember the old answering machines? It's sounded home. Yeah. And my uncle calls me, and my cousin worked in one of the buildings. And by the grace of God, I guess she was late. She was either late for work that day or something happened. And so he calls me. The only message I get is, now he woke me up with this call, is Debbie's okay. She wasn't in the building when the plane hit it. And then I get a click. And I'm laying in bed. I'm like, plane hit it? What the hell is this guy talking about? Plane hit a building? How you are when you're like half awake, half asleep. And I pop up and I listen to the message again. And I put the TV on and I'm like, holy shit. And I call Mike, my partner. I'm like, dude, what do we do? Like, do we go in? What? And then we end up getting calls like to come in later, because I guess the off-duty mobilization is like people on the next tour don't come in, but the people on the tour after that, whatever it was. So
we didn't follow that though. We talked about that on the anniversary show.
Yeah,
I don't know that any command really followed that.
Yeah, I got called. I come in at 3. It was already like kind of whatever time it was, right? 10 o'clock or whatever. So, I go in, and then at the second night, this is from like the second night. And a lot of the guys I talked about, my partner Mike is there, and you recognize him from, I think, another photo he was in. And, we were down there every night, right? Like, we just like a lot of cops, and, you'd get a day off here or there, you'd work patrol, you'd do something else, and you'd come back. And when I would go there 2 or 3 nights in a row, I still have these boots, actually. I have these boots and I have that helmet. They're in a box in my, here. And we would go down, and I would drive down there. You'd park down there, right? Like, as you were reporting direct, and you'd have to this is that restricted area, so you were able to park. And I wore that same getup, the same jacket, the same shirt, the same pants, the same undershirt every day. I would come home, and I would be a garbage bag outside my door. I would get undressed outside, put all the stuff in there, bring it in, wash it, dry it, and then I would wear the same thing again the next day, because you were covered. You came home covered every day in crap, and I didn't want that crap in my house. Like, they were telling us, it's good, it's good. But
the air was good too.
The air was good, everything was good. But everybody knew, like, you couldn't be down there and think any of that shit was good to breathe in. So that experience was like, we did the bucket piles, and then as time went on, you were doing perimeter security, and it got more organized, and they started following some safety protocols for like construction and moving stuff around, and it was just like, I can remember getting served at the Marriott, like, dinner from Brooke Shields one night, because all celebrities would come out and do that and kind of try to cheer people up, and they had that boat that you would go to, and you would people were I don't know that any cop will ever experience the positive attitude and the thankfulness and gratefulness that the population had towards the police than they did right after 9/11. I think it just, I don't know that, like, I don't want it to get there if it takes something like that to make it get there. But I'd love to see it happen organically as people start to realize how important the police are. And that may very well happen over the next bunch of years as things get worse in New York City, which I would imagine they will.
I'm not as optimistic as you, Steve. And what I said on our show was that as unfortunate as this statement is that, God forbid there was even another incident like this, I don't think that we would see the rallying and the support behind the first responders as we did here.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder about that. Like, would there be a point where even our greatest detractors say, "Hey, like cannot manage this situation without the police. Like, it's just not manageable," and they would be supportive, even if it was only for that. But they'd still say, "Yeah, do this, but don't go out there and arrest anybody." I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to find out. Like, that's a theory I just don't want to ever test. But I think, if you see crime start to creep up in the city, I think those people that are in the middle of the road, because I truly believe this, like most people are in the middle of the road on just about everything. And you just have a very loud group of people on either side of the political spectrum that are just obnoxiously loud. And some of them do better on social media than others. And social media is like a force multiplier for like assholes, right? Like it's just filled with them. And so what would happen after something like that? I think that the good people that kind of keep quiet for the most part would just drown out the voice of the few people that are like, the cops are the devil group of people.
John's got to take off.
Oh, all right, John. John is just a real good guy. And he got, I'll tell you this. So John goes to a 59 on Halsey Street in Brooklyn. This was like 2007, maybe. And as a matter of fact, that plaque right there is John got it for me after the incident because he felt I treated him really well after it. And just it really means a lot. I display it with a lot of pride. He goes to a 59 of all things and gets shot. It was a guy had set, it was like an SRO, a guy had set fire to the kitchen. He goes there, it's the sergeant and his driver and John and the guy that he was working with. I think that was the setup in the cars. And if I get it wrong, I apologize. And they go, and the FD guys are like, hey, this is a maniac up there that like set a fire to the kitchen. So they go up, they knock on the door, and the guy opens the door just a crack. And he's like, what the fuck you guys want? And one of the cops puts his foot in the door so like the guy can't close it on them again, and kind of puts his shoulder on the door. So and the guy tries to close it on him, and they just kind of shoulder the door open, and the guy shoots the first cop right in the chest with a 44 Magnum. I mean, from like, this close, literally. The guy had a burn mark like you couldn't believe on his chest. The vest stopped it. And they all kind of fall in. And this room, Ron, it was like a little bit bigger than a king-size bed, the entire room. It was like a closet. And they all land on top of this guy. And the guy lets another round off, and it hits John in the back. And it travels in between his vest and his back and leaves like a burn mark up his whole back and does some nerve damage as it comes across the spine. But it never penetrates from what I remember him. And so they end up like wrestling. Nobody can get their guns out to fire any rounds. They're on top of each other. And they end up getting the guy in custody. And he's probably still in a psych institute, this guy. John ends up getting off the job and just like unbelievable. I mean, he basically jumped on top of a guy with a gun so the other guy's going to get shot. So John is, John's the kind of guy you want in the car with you next to you if the shit goes down.
Appreciate your service, John. Appreciate you coming in and joining us on the chat today, and you're interactive. Come back and watch the rest of Steve's interview on the recorded side.
So
appreciate you.
Yeah. So my 9/11 experience was like a lot of cops. I mean, it was terrible. I went to a lot of funerals. As much as you feel guilty not being able to go to all of them, but what are you gonna? What are you going to do? You can't. I went to the ones that I could make it to. I mean, we were working 12, 13, 14-hour days. Most of us were sleeping 3 or 4 hours a day to try to get to a funeral here or there. We were going to PD funerals, FD funerals. It wasn't just NYPD. You had Port Authority guys that were killed. You had 343 firefighters that were killed, and so it was a lot to kind of deal with, and. You think about it, I don't know that there's really a day that goes by that you don't think about it, even if it's only for a second. I mean, you're reminded of it. Jimmy, what's up? You're reminded of it. Great sergeant, 8-1 guy. was a sergeant when I got there, taught me how to do the desk, taught me about leadership and supervision. Like I said, I had like an embarrassment of riches when it came to great people to mentor from and to learn from. I said it about the training officer, but you could fall across people that are like, I would call them bags of shit, right? That just don't want to do anything. And if you get in that mindset, or you let them suck you into that mindset, your career goes in a completely different path. So I get back from the FBI Academy. I get the call from the funny looking Ron Leeson, and you say, hey, listen, there's Lori Pollock has taken over crime control strategies, the chief of crime control strategies. They need somebody to run the ComStat side of it. Your name came up. And so do you want to do it? I kind of felt like I was getting voluntold for it. And so I went
Lori wouldn't do that.
No, if I had said no, there would have been any hard feelings. But you know what, for me, I was in a graduate program at the time. I was like, all right, this will be an interesting thing to do. Right. And so I was the ComStat lieutenant, where we would pull the cases, we would go through them. I learned a lot about the crime stats. I worked with the crime the data analysts and the data scientists and the director of like data analytics, who was a great guy. And I learned, like, we would talk a lot about how the DOS system worked. And I worked with those guys as they developed Patternizer to tweak it, to make it better. Like, all right, from a squad commander perspective, what fields on the 61 would match together with that. And so I felt like I was able to kind of help everybody with that kind of stuff. I learned a ton. I did the ComStat for a while, and then I moved to special projects where I was working on things like trying to integrate Ring doorbell cameras into the Detective Bureau like system, how we could work that. I worked on this whole project about gang involvement in the tow truck industry, and we came up with this whole plan about how we were going to move thank you, thanks, Mike. We were going to move the licensing to a different agency, and we were going to change responsibilities for agencies. We had like the legal was helping us with writing some legislation to move these things, because it had to be done. It wasn't just something you could be like, all right, now you guys do it. And so it was really interesting. And I was daily involved in the crime stats. Like, I had to give Lori a kind of briefing on what would happen every day. So I kind of had to read everything from the whole city. So I kind of pop it around in my head, like everything that happened in the city. I had to familiarize myself with neighborhoods and gangs that I had never heard of before, because I had worked in Brooklyn and Queens, and I don't know what's going on in the Bronx or upper, northern Manhattan. I saw how the stats worked, how they were compiled, the importance of the different stats, why things got downgraded, upgraded, like why some things got held and didn't get put on the homicide sheet until stuff came back from the city, from the medical examiners, and like stuff we were waiting. Like, I learned about all the secret stuff that everybody kind of always had their theories about it out in the field. They do it this way. They do it this way. And now I was like, no, well, this is why they really do it. And it was great. It was helpful in a couple of ways. One, I finished my master's degree, and the experience I had, coupled with the ComStat experience and my success in that program, like, I got hired to teach for them like within 2 months. I was teaching classes in a graduate program, and a lot of it was I was teaching the stuff about the crime stats and whatnot, because I was doing that. And it just gave me a better perspective on what was going on with everything. And I sat in on meetings with all the 3-star chiefs for the ComStat briefing. Oh, there he is. There he is. So he just retired.
How are you, Pete?
The greatest squad commanders ever. My counterpart in the 110.
My SOL.
Almost daily about the crossover crime between the 110 and the 115. He retired a few weeks ago. I flew up there for his walkout. Another guy flew up from Florida. There he is. That's my crew. Like he's
the tall guy in the middle.
Oh, he's right now. He's crushing his beer can.
There you go. And Pete, I don't know if you were on earlier. Happy birthday Monday, and thank you for your service. Another United States Marine.
Yeah. All these guys, great, talented people, and a few of them have commented here already. I won't point to who's who, but we've seen some comments. And geez, Pete, we could do a whole show on Pete too, and his career. And so I learned a lot in that crime control strategies position. And then eventually I moved on. I wanted to go back to the bureau. Like it was cool, but I was like, eventually I was that. And Lori was moving on to, where did she go after that? It was collaborative policing. And so
Yep.
and Lori was like a great person to work for. We had so much fun in that office. We got serious work done, right? Like we did serious stuff up there. We got ready for these everybody, our comps, all you did was beat up on the CEOs. No, we were auditors, right? We audited this stuff to make sure like we wanted to make sure that things were going the way that we had trained people to. That was at a comp set. So for a while I was a guy back there, but there was an importance to it, right? And like Bratton didn't bring CompStat and Jack Maple didn't bring CompStat to the NYPD because they wanted to break people's balls, right? There was a reason for it, and it worked. Now, could it have gotten out of hand at some point with some stuff? Yeah, maybe, right? But the importance of it was keeping squads and keeping precinct commanders focused on certain things that were going on, bringing to light stuff. It wasn't a place generally to air out like really bad, dirty laundry, although I had a bad experience.
There's also a lot about collaboration too.
Collaboration, right? Who's working?
Making sure that, right, everybody the left was talking.
Right. And that was one of the great things that Bobby Boyce did, was he got rid of a lot of the silos when you had that unified command structure. Because if you remember, you had Narco was in OCCB, right? Like there was different units and it was very siloed. And you could never, I wouldn't be able to call like the Narco guy and be like, hey, I need you to do some enforcement over here because I had a shooting over here and I want to bring in some people in. Like, we're getting sent out by the chief OCCB on something in Manhattan. We can't do that. When it all came together in that unified structure and they all fell under the borough, like it just got better. The communication got better. You trusted them a little bit more. Like things just worked better. It was a great idea. I imagine it's still that way. And so I learned those kind of things working in CompStat. Now, when I went back to the Detective Bureau, I went from the guy writing those questions or being part of writing those questions to the guy then getting asked those questions again. It was a lot easier the second time around to go to CompStat. Now, Pete will tell you they never asked me a hard question. I would dispute that. But they asked Pete a lot of hard questions, and man, he always had the answers. I never saw that guy get flustered ever.
No, and stand up people. I remember I was up at CompStat one time, and it was under Phil Banks was the chief of department at the time.
Okay.
For some reason, I was the fifth command in crime out of 8. There was no reason for me to go to the podium. I get there that morning. Ron, you're going to be up first. Okay, so I'm up there, and they're going over stuff. He wouldn't let me look down at my stuff. I went to look at my iPad because I was one of the first guys on an iPad.
Yeah.
And he's asking me about robberies, and I go to bring it up. He goes, "No, Ron, don't look down. Pretend you're in the hall with your boss, Jimmy Hall, and he asks you about robberies in the 110." So I start going through things, and it just goes on, and then he goes, "All right, so we get midway through the CompStat, you have a break.
Yeah.
And when we come back, the 110, you're going to come back up and talk about your assaults." What the hell's going on, right?
If you went through the break, you really pissed somebody off.
Oh yeah, I know exactly. So, well, it was only me. I was the only command up there. It was around the room and in the 110.
You probably made some offhand remark in a bar one night that somebody overheard. And did you?
I don't know. I to this day don't know the reason why, but it was good because at one point you had Pete and my XO Ralph Forgione, who
6'7"
were trying to come up to answer a question to like try to help bail me out or whatever on one of the questions. I literally put my arm up, held them back.
Yeah.
And I said to them, and Pete, you can vouch for me for this. I put my hand up, I stopped them. I said, "Don't bother. It's a hit. I got this. Like, don't even come up because you're gonna get shrapnel." At that point, it was just a hit. I put my arm up. Don't bother. And then later on, I heard that it actually that came over the microphone, so people in the room heard me say that to them too. But whatever it was at that point, it was what it was. But stand up guy, because he tried to step up and contribute.
You know what the worst at CompStat was? When you had somebody from the table that would grab the mic.
There he is, 2 hours and 45 minutes at the podium. Right. It's a hit. I got this.
Did you ever
245.
have
We did
this?
around the room, and it was just the 110 break, 110. The
Did
rest
you
of
ever
the
have
borough
this happen
loved
to
it.
you?
They loved it
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, they were
because they
thanking
all
you.
told
Look,
me too. I
they
walked
should have
out of
taken you
there.
out for lunch after that. That you saved them
Well,
all.
I
Did
walked
you
out
ever have
all
this
over.
happen to you when you're up there and they ask about something and some genius grabs the mic and then he mentions your command? Like you're not even up. You're sitting there too. And he's like, yeah, this guy over there, he did a couple robberies. He did one in the 110 once. And then he just puts the mic down and then they're like, Ron, what do you know about him? And you're like, what did I do? How did I get involved in this? I was just clear. I was in the clear. What did you do? What did you do that for?
Oh, too many times.
Yeah,
Too
that
many
was
times. But they love when I was up there because I would yak, 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 and people would be just going like this, like, eat the clock up, eat the clock up. I'd be telling stories. Because I always told people, too, it's like, you go up there, you get beat up or whatever. It is what it is. Afterwards, they'd be all depressed, and I'd get beat up, and I'd be like hanging out, like, all right, what diner are we hitting on the way back to the command? And I'd tell people, it's Thursday, right? When we get home, what's going to be there? Oh, my check's going to be in my account.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's business.
I got to tell you, when I was the 115 squad commander, my seat was all the way at the front. Like, there's the two rows, and my seat was the first row. So I was sitting like face to face with Boyce and like, I guess the chief of the park, whoever it was, I forget who it was. So one day they're talking about a guy that my squad had locked up a couple times. They're talking about him in another command, and they're going through stuff. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I go to grab the mic, and Boyce is sitting right there, and he leans forward and he taps the table. He goes, okay. Like, that's you learn. You learn. All right, don't ever touch that. That mic is there not to be used. Unless they ask you a direct question. Or you try to be trying to save somebody from a beating, but the problem is if you do that and you grab the thing, you're a stand-up guy, but you might you might get clobbered for it. You might get clobbered for it. So, but it was a great experience. And Lori, we had so much fun together in that office. And I got to tell you, like, I was in a lot of those meetings, and I was not always thrilled with the way she was spoken to. And like, I felt like she could have done a lot more, and she was held back a little bit. Like, she was talented. She was a real street cop too. She wasn't just some person that got dumped in there that they were like, Jimmy Palumbo. Holy man. Some names I haven't thought about in a while. How are you? I hope you're doing well. Are you still on the job? Is he still on the job? Does anybody know?
I don't think so. But I agree with you 100%. I was her XO with the candidate assessment division.
Yeah, she knew,
worked hand in hand with her. And she always said, you're my partner. You don't work for me. You're my partner.
Yeah, she knew the streets. She treated us great. Like, listen, she had her expectations, and if you didn't meet them, she let you know. Right?
Oh, yes, she did.
It was never personal. It was never personal. Like, I felt like it was fun, and I learned a lot in that office. And all the people that I worked with there, I learned a lot from. Again, I stay in touch with some of those people. I still talk to Lori, and I was grateful for the time I spent there and what it did for my career and what it did post career and the opportunities that it opened up. And so I went back to the squad. I ended up I was in the 111 for a very short period of time. And that's where that photo was of me sitting at the seat there. And then I was in the 104, and John has kind of chimed in a couple times here. John and I worked together in the 8-1. He was a cop. I was a sergeant. We stayed in touch, and he ended up being my sergeant. When I got back there, Eddie Lott was the chief, and he said, "Hey, that's my last day in the squad." And he said, "Hey, I got this guy, John Lawton. I'm thinking about putting him there." I said, "So take him. I want him right now. Get him over here." Just a top-notch guy. There's Johnny right there standing next to me. And we did some fun work over there. And, I would go out with my guys. We would go out hunting for perps. Like, I liked getting involved in stuff. And I had a good time. And I retired out of there, mid 2020. And that's it. That was the end of my NYPD career. I moved to Texas a month later, and I've been down here for 5 years. This is the 2-hour version of my career. I could give you the 10-hour version, but we don't have 10 hours. So now I live in a small town. 1,700 people live in this town. I'm on the crime control board for the town. which basically does like some funding stuff and some other things with the police department. This is one of our town meetings that we have, and so I'm enjoying that. And I took a job with. Eventually, I was teaching a little bit, and then I started looking for work. I took the police certification thing down here, and I had that, and then I moved over and decided to I got a job at the city of Dallas running like an internal investigation, civilian investigations thing. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but it's risk management. I have a great boss. Gives me a lot of freedom to kind of run the shop as I want. I have 15 people working for me. They investigate incidents with city equipment. They go out in the field. I mostly retired law enforcement insurance professionals. They go out in the field. They gather all the information. So they have something very different set up in Dallas. And that's a group of retired NYPD guys that live down here. We get together for 9/11 and for some other stuff. And so they have this really unique thing down here. All the departments' accidents are overseen by the Office of Risk Management. Instead of each department reviewing them, you know how each precinct had the board and you review whether it was preventable or not and like recommend retraining. Here it is the Office of Risk Management does it, and then they determine preventability, and then there's like a corrective action matrix that, depending on, it's a point system. If you've been in a certain number of incidents, the points are based on the contributing factor. And so I oversee all those investigations. I also oversee all the drug testing for the city of Dallas for all the employees and the contract with the vendor. And everything except the police randoms and the fire randoms. I do all the pre-employment, current employees, randoms, the DOT program, and driver's license monitoring that Internal Affairs does for us, all that. And I do a lot of policy writing. I've rewritten quite a few city policies, and I'm continuing to work on that. So it's a job that keeps me very busy. Got a fancy little office in Dallas City Hall. And I got a great group of people that work for me, and I can talk cop with them because a lot of them are retired cops. Even the guys that aren't kind of live in that world. And so it's a good group of guys. And like I said, there's a group of NYPD guys down here that I can kind of shoot the shit with every once in a while when you want to talk cop. And that's a fun group, and we have a good time when we get together. We go to ball games together and stuff like that. Yeah. So
hey, listen, we're an hour and 45 minutes in, and I know you have prior engagement in a little while. So we don't have a lot of time to get into a pretty deep topic. So I think we'll touch on it, and then Rob and I will bring you back, and we'll do either a whole nother show or a good segment on because I have a lot of questions and it's good. But why don't you just Joe Mango didn't talk about the ODMP. No, we're not. That's the thing. We went through his whole career, and we don't want to glaze over something that's so important. But as it said in the show preview, that you're the director of research for Officer Down Memorial Page. You also, what wasn't there, and what anybody in the NYPD knows, you also were instrumental in getting a lot of people recognized for line of duty deaths that were not recognized prior. And you started up when the social media started up under Bratton 2. Bratton 1.
2.
Is Bratton 1?
Yeah, 2.
Bratton 2.
I'm too young for Bratton 1. I'm too young for Bratton 1.
Oh, sorry. I got on the job with Bratton 1. That's right.
It was safer was the PC when I got
right. So you were the lead with your partner on NYPD in Memoriam. Yeah. So you want to take us through? I'll try and bring up a few of the pictures, but take us through were you involved with ODMP before in Memoriam?
Yeah, so I've been involved with ODMP for 25 years, just about. So I got involved when it was at its infancy. The ODMP was started by a gentleman named Chris Cosgriff, who at the time was a college student, and he was kind of outraged by seeing that a cop killer had been released early. He decided to create. He was a computer guy. He started to create this. He was at George Mason University, I think it was called James Mason University, George Mason, and he started this webpage, and it kind of started to grow legs. And He developed it into a real memorial for officers that were killed in the line of duty. Eventually, we were able to get like the master list from the National Memorial, which turned out they did a great job collecting names, but it turned out to not be such a master list because a lot of departments did not know about line of duty deaths that they'd had in the past. So I started by just kind of updating memorials for Chris. And then I started working on updating the I started with the NYPD ones first, and getting information was difficult. The department didn't have information on most of the deaths that were, older than 30 or 40 years old, 50 years old. And so I turned to newspapers, and at the time there was no such thing as like online ProQuest or any of these other scan sites. So I would go to the library and I would find newspaper articles on microfilm. Like I would dig through the microfilms in newspapers to find articles to get the details of what had happened. Like an article like this from I need my glasses. Yeah, this is from 1925, and so I started updating the NYPD stuff, and then I got introduced to a gentleman named Mike Bozak, and a lot of people know who Mike is. He used to do a newsletter that he would send out, and Mike is kind of the unofficial story, and that's Mike Ryan. That's a different Mike, but Mike Bozak kind of had a master list of line of duty deaths with details, so I used that. But then Mike had also done some research and found something like 40 or 50 line of duty deaths that had not been recognized by the department. And one day I started doing, like I was thumbing through these old microfilms, and I found an article on a patrolman named John Stewart, who was killed in 1854, I think, on Broad Street in a building collapse, and he wasn't on any of these lists. He wasn't on the National Memorial, and I contacted the Chief of Personnel's office, and I sent them the information, and that's part of the article that I found, and I sent them. I think I wrote a 49 actually, and sent them all the newspaper articles, and they were like, okay. And I think that's how I ended up getting introduced to Mike. And as time went on, I started finding more and more and more of these. But what I came to find out was that for whatever reason, there was this hesitancy on the department to add these names, to own up to the fact that they had missed all these names. And I finally got in touch with a guy named Mike McGrath, who was a lieutenant at the time. I think he's since passed, unfortunately. And he was a good guy. I think he was the CO of the Cadet Corps for a while. And he was kind of running this project, and I would pass along all this information to him. When he left, Mike Ryan took over, and that was that article that you would put up. And he had found some names, and we put this all together, and were able to get a good number of them there was a board, kind of like the medal committee. It was an honor committee, and they decided which ones we had kind of put together enough information on to substantiate that they had died in the line of duty. And so, back in the day, they would post special orders or today's personnel orders in the New York Times. It was in the newspaper, so you were able to get that the death notices. You were able to go back, figure out when they got on the job by finding their name in an order from when they got on the job. And then, we would find all these articles. I had a contact at the office that did, I forget what they're called now, that did the death certificates, where I was able to get them cost free, because they charge like $30 a death certificate. And we would pull all the death certificates and put together these packages on everybody. And Mike put on a lot of work department wise, because it was, like, as you can imagine, like trying to get anything done on the job is difficult. Getting names added to that wall from 150 years ago. That's a library in the Bronx where I had to crawl through it. And this photo doesn't do justice how dusty and disgusting this place was. To find a command log for an officer that had died in Queens. The command log ended up in the Bronx. I forget how I tracked it down to this attic library in the Bronx, and found the command log entry he drowned trying to save somebody. I think his name was Maloney. And so we got all these names added, and then subsequently, a few years later, a bunch more names were added. But that kind of then I started finding names from Long Island. These three officers are from Lynbrook. Lynbrook was under the impression for a long time they had no line of duty deaths. They actually had 3 officers killed in the line of duty within a 2-year period. I had found that, and some of these were accidental. Like I was looking for information on one officer, I'd read an article, and it would mention another incident. And I'd be like, that's interesting. I don't know that guy either. And I had these spreadsheets, handwritten spreadsheets and articles and binders of newspaper articles to try to coordinate all this stuff. And that's the ODMP board now. the executive director, and I think is back there, Sandra, and Catherine in the front. Her father was killed in the line of duty. She's on our board, and that's Chris to the right, and Mike, who's Chris is their brother-in-laws, and they're all very dedicated. I mean, they put a lot of time and effort into this. Chris did this all volunteer. He's now a captain in Fairfax. I don't want to get this wrong because Chris will be mad. It was it's Fairfax County PD, not the city, I think, and not the sheriff's department. These guys have worked tirelessly on the site. It's gone through a lot of changes over the years. We just did a refresh on it in the last 2 weeks. We updated the whole page and how the memorials present and everything like that. So it's a lot more interactive. It's a lot easier to search. And I was involved in that. That's the new version. And so as time went on, I started finding officers from all over the country, a ton of them. And then people would start contacting me about that. And then we had people that would volunteer to do research in specific areas of the country and send stuff over to us. And eventually the organization built so big, and it was all volunteer and it was all donations that kept us running, that we hired employees. And now we have several employees working for us, doing research, doing updates of memorials. There's a memorial grant program that gives grants to departments that can't afford to build memorials. We have something that we published that it's a book that basically is instructions for departments what to do if somebody dies in the line of duty, what benefits are available to family members of officers that died in the line of duty, all these different possible organizations to go to. We're in the Federal Combined Municipal Campaign for donations. We run the National Police Week 5K. There's an officer down ride. We have a partnership with Law Enforcement United. For a period of time, we had a grant from the federal government, and we were the clearinghouse for line of duties to get information to departments. We created an ODMP canine. There was a huge call for that, like canine dogs that are killed in the line of duty. We were involved in an organization getting vests to officers to try to save officers from ending up on the ODMP. And what I came to find was our site is used for training. We had infographics on line of duty deaths and causes. I actually saw one hanging in our police academy in New York. We would get a lot of media requests for information. And so the organization built, and of course, through all this, the main focus is always on highlighting the officers, the sacrifice that they've made, keeping their stories alive generation to generation, and making sure that we never forget isn't just some line that people say, oh, I'll never forget. Yeah. Like that their legacy carries on, and that the officers that died that for whatever reason through history just got, I don't want to say forgotten, but yeah, they were unrecorded line of duty deaths, and that happened for a lot of reasons. In New York, I can go through a whole ton of reasons why it happened, from the types of deaths weren't recognized if they weren't combat line of duty deaths, to there was a lot of different departments in New York that consolidated before before it was the NYPD, and names got lost through that process. The same with other departments, like things just got lost. The information wasn't at everybody's fingertips in 1850. There'd be 2 newspaper articles about it. Everybody would give the guy's wife some money, and that would be that was it, right? So that was the ODMP. And so I found 2 guys. I found 2 6-7 cops while I worked there. I found the command logs in the basement of the precinct with the entries, and their plaques are now hanging in the 6-7, along with the other officers that have given their line of duty, with Tony Massimillo and Vito Moro and Rafferty and Parker and Gunn. They added plaques for them. And so it was a great feeling. I would go down to Washington and see these names I had researched added to that wall in Washington, D.C. and etched on the wall, and I'd get to read the names at the memorial. And so Brandon Del Pozo, who's one of my training officers, reaches out to me one day. He was working for the chief of the department, and he says, hey, they're looking to do this program where they read like the bio and the information about what happened to an officer at roll call on the date in history when they were killed in line of duty, but they only want to go back like 35 years because we can't read. Some days have 10 guys. I have a calendar that I put together that you could subscribe to, and it puts it on your iPhone, like all the date who died. And some days it's like 10 guys. You're like, well, you can't read all that, right? So they went back 25 years, and it started out not as pretty as this. It was just kind of a white sheet. And then at some point, employee relations took it over, and a gentleman named Lloyd Pipersberg took over this project, and he created this background, reformatted everything. We updated the narratives, and now these are available on the site to download. The NYPD internal site, and I think they're available externally also on the memorial side of the NYPD webpage. And I see these things all over the place now, and to have been part of getting that started and making sure that like cops know about their fellow officers who gave their lives in the line of duty. And that was a coin that that I put together, and we the proceeds of that went to I think to cops or maybe the Widows and Orphans for the PBA or something like that. I forget what it was. It was a great, and it continues to be a great experience to get that done. But with that, I gained some notoriety from doing all that, and so when social media started, the job came to me. Al, that was running like the director of social media for the city, came to me and said, "Hey, they want to do an NYPD in memoriam where every day we tweet out the officers that were killed in the line of duty." And we had debated like how we were going to format it. Were we going to do a link to the ODMP? Like the department wasn't really fond of that, like linking outside the department. How are we going to do it? And I was like, "Listen, you let me run this how I think will best tell the story, and we'll go from there." Right. And so they never really gave me any heat about anything. And so we would tweet out a short, because at that time Twitter was locked to the characters. Now you could write forever on it. So it had to be short, and then we would link in the ODMP.
Is this the right picture now?
This is Mike Ryan. So this is they did an article on all the work of getting these officers in. I'll also tell you this: Mike Ryan is the reason that all the military guys wear those breast bars now for the military. That if they were in the Marines or the Navy, he's the one that designed those. He also designed and put up the Armed Forces Memorial at headquarters. Like that was his baby also. Like every one of you guys that's able to proudly wear that breast bar for the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, whatever you're in, that's because of him. That was his thing. And he did all the research to figure out who had died in different wars from the that were when they were deployed. And so I started that site and I launched it. I want to say it was May of 2015. 2015 from DC on Police Week. I sent my first tweet out. Maybe it was 2010. I mean, I don't remember. When did Bratton come back?
I don't know. I think it was before
2013. So it was probably 2015.
I think it was before 2015 because I left.
I think 15. He came back 14 because I was just leaving the 7-1, and I ran with that every day. I tweeted out. I set it up. They had a program that you could set up so I would sit down and do like 10 days in advance. And then when I didn't have photos of the guy, what I would do is I'd pull those articles that I had, because by then I had them scanned in and they were coming off that, and I'd put the article up. Like, here's an article of it. And I did that, and that took off. And I kept that account even after I retired. Like, no, they didn't ask for it back. I kept doing it for a number of years, and then sadly, kind of like life got in the way. I would schedule them, and then I got a call from DCPI one day saying, "Hey, do you still have the password for this account?" I said, "Yeah,
I got that too."
Can you give it to us? Maybe. What's it? No, I gave it to them, and that was it. I mean, there's so much I can go into with the ODMP.
Yeah. I do have a question though.
Yeah.
When you identify someone that was previously not designated as a line of duty death,
mm-hmm.
do the pension benefits change for the family?
No, and you see that most of these, almost everybody I found was from the early 1900s or 1800s. So that's like anybody that would get a pension benefit is long gone. But that was like, those were concerns that were voiced with adding people to the memorial. Is like, what happens when family members appear, like even 2 or 3 generations later, and these people didn't get a benefit? And I think finally, people somebody with some common sense was like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing here? So are there people that get added from 15 years ago? There are, right? Like but that's pension board stuff. That has nothing to do with like a historical one. My research was solely for historical ones. And we're talking like 1940s and earlier for the most part, but a good number of them were like 1920 and earlier, a lot of 1800s. I mean, the Long Island ones, there was also New York, there was Sheriff, Queens Sheriff, Bronx Sheriff, like all those, these Limerick ones were from the 30s, but those family members, like we tried to track some of them. We did hear from family members. And I know the department was successful in tracking people down, because another thing we used was the old pension cards. Like we were able to, interestingly enough, like these guys weren't on the wall, but their pension cards were stamped line of duty. This was from a sheriff, a Queens sheriff that was killed in the line of duty. And I turned that all over to the sheriff's department. They got those guys added to well, I actually met the guy. It was like a weird meeting. He's like, meet me on the side of the highway off of the Jackie Robinson and hand me over the stuff. I was like, oh, okay. So I met him there and handed him a big envelope of all these articles. And they subsequently had, I think I found 5 guys from the sheriff's department. I was part of the Brotherhood for the Fallen. I went to funerals, around the country. This was Deputy Howland, Carson. He was in Carson City, which is outside of Reno. And the department was good about that too. I mean, my directive on that was, there was a time where talking to the media was like, The direction I got from that was, don't say anything stupid. You're at a police funeral. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Thanks for the advice. Good, great advice. And so they didn't mind if I did media interviews and whatnot when I would travel for this stuff. And that was in Albuquerque. I went out there twice in a year.
And I believe JetBlue is still flying members to the funerals for free. Yeah,
they were flying members for free to the funerals. It was a great donation by them, and it allowed. And I got to tell you, like we would show up at these funerals, like on the other side of Reno, Nevada. And I remember that in Reno, Deputy House father showed up. We went to a repass after at a bar, and his dad showed up, and he came in. He said, "Where are those NYPD guys?" Because and that's what I hope these young guys understand is like there's a responsibility that comes with wearing that shield and that patch, is to uphold the standards and the history of this department. Like, yeah, it goes through its phases, up and downs, guys get in trouble, things are unjust from here to there. But this department has such a history and such a gloried history of greatness and people making great sacrifices. And like, it doesn't say world's greatest detectives up on the in every squad for a reason. Like, people don't recognize the NYPD above anywhere else, even down here where I'm in Texas. They want to talk to you like about your career and about things that happen. And not to take away from any of the other departments, right? Like everybody does great work, but like they seek out that brand because they know, even with all the bullshit that goes on, like, we police a city of 8.5 million, which is probably more like 9 million, expands to like 10 plus million during the workday. And when I got on 42,000 people, I think now they're down to 34,000. Like, and keep it together and keep the city, for the most part, pretty orderly, right? Like, even with the amount of crime that there is per capita, the crime is extremely low. And like, that's an impressive feat. They want to know how you did it. How do you do this? Because it seems impossible that you could keep a city organized and relatively safe with 32,000 or 35,000 cops when you're outnumbered. But it happens. And the history fascinates them. Things like wearing the same shields, fathers give the shields to the son. They don't do that in other departments. They just don't. And they're fascinated by it, these other departments. So and that's why I tell guys, like, when you go out there, we all have 50 horror stories, right? That we could tell. Save those for the bar. Like, don't tell those horror. Those are not for the public consumption. For public consumption, the things we're talking about here. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't be critical of things that happen, but like, public consumption stuff is not that crazy story that like 6 guys know about, and you're like, oh man, that's bad, right? It just is not. It should be positive, especially other departments. I went to the FBI Academy. Yeah, we talked about failures of the department. We talked about scandals that happened, but it was more along the lines, all right, what did we learn from this and how did we make it better? I just was never a big fan of, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not talking about criticizing policies and things like that. I'm only talking about just constant naysaying. And so that would be my takeaway for the young guys. Like, if you're going to go to funerals, if you're going to be out in public like that, just respect that, respect the shield, respect that, because none of us like the guy that tarnishes the shield because they're corrupt or they're doing something that they should. They embarrass us in the media. Like, we also don't like the guy that embarrasses us in public for stupidity like that. It's important to me. I hope it's important to a lot of cops and bosses now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, listen, I appreciate it, Steve. It's been a great interview with 2 hours and almost 10 minutes in. I know you got to go.
Yes, I do.
And we could keep going. You know, we could have this conversation. And like I said, I'm sure Rob and I will have you back on.
Yeah.
92 Charlie, friend of the podcast. Let's get Steve Weiss to join the Finest Unfiltered. He'd be a great addition. Very interesting career and insight of what the job was back in the day. Steve, you left 5 years ago.
Back in the day.
It's sad how people think back in the day was 5 years ago.
92 Charlie makes me feel old.
25 years ago and 20 years ago, you know, when you were out in the 6.7 and the 8.1 and everything else. So different times, definitely different times. But now that we've had you on for your interview, you are part of the Finest Unfiltered family. So, you know, John and Eric may ring you up one day and say, hey, listen, we got an interesting topic we're going to talk about. They do this thing on Fridays called the Round Table, where they bring other people on, past guests, sometimes join them for the topic of conversation. Like tonight, Rob banged in, it wasn't an E-Day, it was a scheduled vacation day. We knew about it last week. I knew about it a long time ago.
He outranks you, man, so you can't deny his day off.
Can't deny a day off. Well, he's the boss, right? He's the chief. How am I going to try? I can't deny the chief, right? But, you know, I'll be off next week. I'll be actually flying out to Texas for a family wedding. Unfortunately, a little bit too far to meet up with you
for a cocktail.
Unfortunately, maybe not, but you know, sometimes we'll tap our family for a co-host spot. So.
I'd be happy to do it, and you know, I'd be happy to come back. I really would love to talk more in depth into the research and the ODMP and the history of it and the NYPD stats. I mean, listen, there's 1,265 NYPD officers died in the line of duty. There's some fascinating stories, like 400 plus of them are from 9/11 related disease, which is the number one killer of NYPD cops now. It overtook gunfire deaths a while ago, and so it would definitely be something I'd be thrilled to talk about more in depth, and how we work with the people at the National Memorial, some of the programs that we have, and how the site has evolved. I gave everybody kind of like the overview, and because if in my eyes, I gave you just an overview of my career too, but it was 2 hours gave you a good overview. But
goes quick, right?
You get to go into some good stories.
Terry
Told some.
His brother, But listen, we always ask this question of our guests. So you're 19-year-old Steve, again, knowing everything that you know about the job and everything you've been experienced, would you do it again?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I would not do a damn thing differently. You know, every decision I made on the job, I was happy with the outcome. I had so much fun. I mean, these stories are like, some of them you can't even tell because people don't believe them. They think you're making them up. Come on, guy, that didn't happen. There's no way that happened. Like, I mean, legitimately, like, you know, gun college where you grab the guy and now you like that happened. That stuff. They're like, come on, would you see that television show? No, that really happened. And so, like, I wouldn't trade that. I wouldn't trade my career for anything at all. I mean, the only thing you regret is some of the time you miss with your family. Like that's the thing that's the sacrifice you make when you're on the job, is you miss stuff with your family. And I feel like my kids, you know, my oldest is 20 now, and I feel like just yesterday he was born. And so you miss that. And I'll tell you this, even knowing what I know now, I would be happy to have my kids come on the job, even with what's going on in the city, even with what happened in the last election. Things it goes in cycles. I would be happy.
You're getting ahead of me. That's the second question.
It's a squad commander in me.
Squad commander, and you're always thinking 3 steps ahead, right? Mm-hmm. 5 steps ahead. No, the second question is, knowing everything that you know, knowing the state of policing today, would you today as a 19-year-old or 21-year-old, or actually now you could be 20 and a half again, Steve Weiss, would you join the NYPD today?
Yes. Yeah. I don't think that like somebody that really wants to do policing as not just a job, but as a career, as a calling, the politics are kind of irrelevant. You can work through those, and I get it. Like, it's going to be tough, right? Like, you gotta be like, you could get in trouble now for stuff like that you didn't. I used to, when we were young on the job, like if a guy got himself in trouble, it was because he did something stupid, right? Like, you'd hear the story that he would tell, and you'd be like, yeah, okay. Then you'd read what happened, and you'd be like, yeah, that's not what he told me. Like, I don't know if it's so much that way anymore. Like, there are guys getting in trouble for stuff that, like, they legitimately did. They didn't make a mistake of the mind. They made a mistake of the heart, right?
I talk about that all the time.
Yeah. Like, so they're getting a substantiated CCRB for using what all of us think is acceptable force to effect an arrest on somebody that's resisting, and now they find themselves in the trial room and losing days. And I think we've seen that happen too often to guys, where then they become hesitant to do it. But that kind of work. But I think that, like, you can adapt. Like, the job is about adapting. Like, the job isn't the same as it was from when we got on to when we left. We had to adapt. Like, we kind of came in through the body camera era. Like, that changed a lot of things. There was no video cameras anywhere. Everything's now on video. So, like, and I thank you. And thank you. I appreciate that. Listen, it means a lot to see comments like that, and that people think of me like that. And I do appreciate that. So I would say, yeah, my answer to that is yes. Like, you just have to be adaptable. If you're stuck in, like, oh, it's got to be like it was in 1975. Well, yeah, this job isn't for you, because it's just not that way anymore. But if you're willing to make those changes and accept what it is, what I would say is get into the bureau quicker than I did, because, like, it's almost impossible to get in trouble there unless you do something really stupid. Like, you're just not on the street like you are. You have less public contact in a confrontational way.
Right. Well, except when you're out on All Out and everything else now that they do every day.
Listen, if you're in warrants,
you don't have time. You don't have time for your casework anymore.
Yeah,
you're doing those detailed DD5s that you need.
Yeah,
But hey, listen, Steve.
Yeah,
great talking to you. Any last words before you go?
Listen, a couple of things. Like, this is a great career. Like, being a cop is a calling. It's a great career. Be proud of what you do. Go into work every day and get done what needs to be done, because, like, there are, as corny as it sounds, like, there's people counting on you out there every day, like, to solve, if you're in the squad, to solve that case, to put your best in and follow the leads and make an arrest, to help their family member. If you're out on patrol, they're counting on you to come to that family dispute. They're counting on you to get that criminal gunman that's walking around the street that's looking to rob somebody. Like, and it's a great job. And there are going to be ups and downs. There are going to be some terrible downs, right? I worked in the 6-7. Two of my colleagues were shot and killed. I mean, it doesn't get more down than that, right? But at the end, when you come out the other end, there's a lot more ups than downs, and so you're on the winning side. And secondly, I'd say don't forget those guys that have given their life, and don't forget their families. But don't, like, when guys get hurt, when guys are in need, if you can, do whatever you can to help those guys out. Like, guys go through terrible stuff. Their kids get sick, their wives get sick, their husbands get sick. And, like, sometimes financially the burden is too much. And you know what? That force multiplier of 1,000 cops giving $20 each makes a big difference, right? And if you can do that, do it. People, they appreciate it. Even if they don't have the ability to say it at some point, they do. I know that they do. We've all known guys in that position, and they're brought almost to tears when they get those kind of donations. So do that if you can.
Yeah. All right. I know you have to go, so we're gonna skip the final segment that we normally do about asking the executive. So no questions today. Just hang out with me for 2 seconds. I just gotta run out the rest of the shows for the week. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. Very insightful. Great career. Again, like I said, I've known you for many years and respected you, and was thankful that you came on. Because Rob took the night off, so instead of bringing a co-host on and doing a regular topic, I like to do interviews every now and then too. So
we appreciate it.
Yeah. So tomorrow, 1:05 p.m., 13:05 hours, the Sal Greco show. He'll be back on. If you want to go back and watch yesterday's show, he had retired Deputy Chief Winston Faison from the aviation unit, who everybody knows was embroiled and is currently embroiled in some allegations and misconduct. He laid out his version, gave his answers to everything, was very candid. I give him a lot of respect for coming on. He didn't dodge any questions, any comments. He was interactive with the comments and then even the naysayers. So it's a good episode. Go back and take a look at that. And then Friday morning, you have the roundtable, 0805, with John, Eric, and Marlon. And then they'll be back on Monday. Their Mondays and Wednesdays show at 0805. Tuesday, Sal Greco will be back at 1:05 p.m. again. And then at 7:05 p.m., 19:05, you have Pete Faselli and Tom Joyce with the 10-4 Tavern. I'm sorry, I did not put down who they're going to have on, but they have guests from across the nation. They had a chief yesterday on. Another great show, great insightful show from Chicago. And so go back and check out that show. And then, of course, next Wednesday, Rob will be with you. I think Eric is going to sit in for me for the executive perspective at 5:05 p.m. And then I'll be back with Rob the following week for our Thanksgiving show on Thanksgiving Eve. So we really appreciate everybody for sticking with us. 2 hours and 20 minutes. Great stamina, Steve. So, we really appreciate that. And we thank you. So until next time, everybody, be safe.
Thanks, boss.